Chapter 3484. Here comes killing intent. Nye Tian looked at Duanmu Lu and frowned. Duanmu, there's no need for you to take the Beacon Soul Sage pill right now, he said coldly. He knew that one of the reasons Duanmu Lu was so eager to get stronger was because he didn't want to be a burden to Nye Tian. Although Duanmu Lu was already a peak paramount god, it was still too dangerous for him to take the Beacon Soul Sage pill right now. Leng Shuang Wuchen reminded him that it would be much safer to take it after he was a half-step sage. However, Duanmu Lu looked at Nye Tian with determination and said, "Trust me, master. Duanmu, you've just become a peak paramount god. I'll think about it after your cultivation stabilizes," Nye Tian replied coolly. His voice wasn't loud, but it was inviolable. He didn't want Duanmu Lu to take any risk. If something happened to him, he would regret it for the rest of his life. "All right," Duanmu Lu said, seeing how determined Nye Tian was. He nodded. At this moment, Nye Tian looked at Ning Xiu and asked with a frown, "Miss Z, where are you going now?" "How would I know where to go?" Ning Xiu's eyes flickered. "You took me out of the auction house. You decide where to go next." "Huh." Nye Tian frowned. He hadn't expected her to say that. "I advise you to go back to the Ning clan. You can't stay in Myriad Treasures Mall," Nye Tian said, looking at her. "Why?" Ning Xiu frowned and shock flashed across her pretty face. She said, "Is my fifth brother really going to kill me? Do you think I'm joking?" Nye Tianling laughed. "Why did your scarlet goose go out of control? You saw Ning Zifeng's reaction when I said it out loud, right? You're not an idiot. You should be able to tell the difference." This. Ning Xiu's face froze and she was speechless. She didn't dare to believe that her own brother actually wanted to kill her. "Fifth brother, why does he want to kill me?" After a moment, Ning Xiu's eyes trembled and she asked in a daze. "I'll have to ask you." Nye Tian laughed and said, "Perhaps you blocked his path. Could it be for a spot to enter the 10,000 pagoda?" Ning Xiu's eyes trembled as she said, "The pagoda will open in 3 months. Our group only has 3 spots. Third brother and ninth brother are the most talented and the strongest, so they will definitely go. There's one last spot left. It's either fifth brother or me. Could it be that fifth brother wants to kill me because of this?" As Ning Xiu spoke, her sparkling eyes became more and more frightened. When Nye Tian heard her words, he couldn't help but frown. It sounded like the opening of the Myriad Pagoda was very important to the Ning family. But he didn't understand why Ning Xiu was qualified to go. Compared to Ning Zifeng, Ning Xiu's talent and strength were far inferior. Ning Zifeng was in the 3rd phase of heaven rhythm, while Ning Xiu was only a peak paramount god. On the other hand, Ning Zifeng had 3 life meridians and had even reached the life pattern level. But Ning Xiu didn't even have one. With such a huge gap, how could Ning Xiu compete with Ning Zifeng for the 3rd spot? "Nye Tian, this girl isn't as simple as she looks." At this moment, Ghost Emperor's voice rang out with a strange laugh. But then, his voice disappeared. Clearly, he didn't want to talk too much to Nye Tian. Nye Tian frowned. Could it be that Ning Xiu had some hidden power that he couldn't see through? After a while, Ning Xiu calmed down a lot. She looked at Nye Tian and said seriously, "Nye Tian, you're my bodyguard now. I've decided to return to the Ning family in 3 months. During this time, you'll be in charge of my safety." Nye Tian frowned, his face grim. He didn't expect Ning Xiu to be so shameless. He still had things to do. Where would he find the time to protect Ning Xiu? "It's decided then. Let's go." Ning Xiu didn't care and said directly. Nye Tian frowned. Just as he was about to say something, the Ghost Emperor said, "Nye Tian, just take this little girl with you. If worst comes to worst, you can put her in the 9 superbs and let her stay there for 3 months. Since she has such a high status, it'll be good for you in the future if you save her." After a moment of pondering, Nye Tian finally nodded. The Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce could be considered a big force in the entire sacred world. Maybe in the future, Nye Tian would need their help. Let's go. Nye Tian let out a long breath and walked out of the Myriad Treasures Mall. Next, he wanted to go to Wolf Night Mountain. Yu Rushui had just told him that he could find the heart-devouring black stone there. In any case, Nye Tian didn't have a good place to go. He might as well go to Wolf Night Mountain to try his luck. After everyone left the Myriad Treasures Mall, they immediately headed to Wolf Night Mountain. Nye Tian had just bought a map of the 7th Sacred World of Cultivators from the Myriad Treasures Mall. The Night Wolf Mountain was 50,000 kilometers away from the Myriad Treasures Mall, so it would take them a few days to reach the Night Wolf Mountain. Nye Tian, why do you want to go to Wolf Night Mountain? Don't you know that Wolf Night Mountain is a forbidden area of the 7th Sacred World of Cultivators? I heard from Lord Grandfather that only a few people can return safely from Wolf Night Mountain. When Ningxiu heard that Nye Tian wanted to go to Wolf Night Mountain, she couldn't help but ask. Nye Tian frowned and snappily said, "Either you go or you don't. Don't talk so much, okay? So arrogant. This young lady doesn't want to talk to you." Ningxiu curled her lips and really ignored Nye Tian. She turned to talk to Duanmu Lu and the others. At this time, Nye Tian's figure suddenly slowed down and a strange smile appeared on his face. "Teacher, what's wrong?" Duanmu Lu came to Nye Tian's side and nervously asked. "Someone is chasing after us." Nye Tian faintly smiled. His figure stood in the void, unmoving like a mountain. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the next moment, two figures appeared in the void like streaks of light and instantly descended in front of Nye Tian and the others. "So it's you guys." Nye Tian looked at the two figures and the corner of his mouth slightly raised. The two people who appeared at this moment were not unfamiliar. They were the two people who competed with Nye Tian for the Beacon Heaven Fate art at the auction house. The red-haired cultivator with the Divine Emperor bloodline and the gloomy young man with the Black Dragon bloodline. Nye Tian didn't expect that these two guys would chase after him first. It was obvious that they were here for the Beacon Heaven Fate art. "Kid, if you're smart, hand over the Fate art in your body." The red-haired cultivator's face was stern and his eyes were filled with killing intent. "Even if I'm willing to hand over the Fate art, I'm afraid that the people behind you won't be willing." Nye Tian faintly smiled and the corner of his mouth raised into a strange smile. The red-haired cultivator and the gloomy young man were stunned at the same time. They immediately felt a bone-chilling killing intent behind them, causing their expressions to change. Chapter 3485. Kill you first. The red-haired cultivator and the gloomy young man felt the cold killing intent behind them. Their faces darkened and they turned around to see a cultivator in black standing behind them. The latter was looking at them with a cold gaze, like a wolf staring at its prey. "You, when did you appear?" The red-haired cultivator looked at the black-robed man with trembling eyes. His teeth were chattering. He didn't notice that there was someone behind him. "Who are you? Why are you following us?" Almost at the same time, the gloomy young man opened his mouth and asked calmly. "You two, one is called Mu Xiong and the other is called Shao Qi, right?" The black-robed man responded. His eyes were like a dark abyss, incomparably cold. "How did you know?" the two of them exclaimed at the same time. They didn't think that the black-robed man would know their names. The red-haired cultivator was called Mu Xiong and the gloomy young man was called Shao Qi. "I know more than that." The black-robed man smiled coldly and said, "Mu Xiong, although you have the Divine Emperor's bloodline, your family is only a third-rate branch of the Divine Emperor family. They aren't valued. As for you, Shao Qi, your Black Dragon bloodline is considered strong among the dragon warriors. Unfortunately, your family is the evil dragon tribe that was abandoned by the dragon warriors." "Shut up." As soon as the black-clothed man landed, Shao Qi let out a low roar. Suddenly, an incomparably violent aura was released from behind him. Waves of sharp aura surged out, as if it wanted to devour the entire world in front of him. Shao Qi suddenly turned around and glared at the black-robed man. He said, "The Black Dragon Tribe does not allow others to interfere." Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, his body released rays of golden light that pierced through the sky like bolts of lightning. Humph! The black-robed man didn't fear Shao Qi's aura at all. Instead, he sneered and said, "You clearly hate being a member of the evil dragon tribe, but you still pretend to protect it. Shao Qi, you've lived too long. You're courting death." Shao Qi's pupils constricted and he roared. A golden spear appeared in his hand and pierced through the air. Suddenly, a golden bolt of lightning shot towards the black-robed man like a wild dragon. Such powerful strength! Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly at the sight of this, and he was quite surprised. Needless to say, Shao Qi's strength was indeed formidable. A terrifying aura instantly burst forth from his spear, bringing with it a destructive might. Kill! With a violent roar, a terrifying spear shadow whizzed out from the front of the pure gold factory and attacked the black-robed man. Shao Qi was from the Black Dragon clan, and the Black Dragon clan was the evil dragon clan of the Sage Realm Dragon clan. What he hated the most in his life was people humiliating the Black Dragon clan. The black-clothed man's words just happened to poke at his sore spot, causing him to instantly go berserk. Very good. In that case, let me experience just how strong a martial genius of the Black Dragon clan is. The black-clothed man sneered, but he was not afraid at all. His body trembled slightly and suddenly, a ghastly claw appeared behind him, releasing a black murderous aura in the air. The space within 10,000 meters was filled with a suffocating aura. Boom! In the next instant, the ghastly claw slammed down directly towards the golden spear shadow. Kaboom! Instantly, the space trembled as the two terrifying forces clashed against each other. The violent force rumbled endlessly, turning into a terrifying storm that battered the space. Immediately, the black-clothed man and Shao Qi retreated at the same time and stood in the air. They looked at each other as if they were hesitating. Neither of them had expected their opponent to be so strong. "Brother Mu, let's kill this man together." At that moment, Shao Qi looked at Mu Xiong and growled. "All right." Mu Xiong nodded. He did not like the black-clothed man either. He was extremely angry that the black-clothed man had humiliated his clan, which was a third-rate branch of the Divine Royal Clan. Boom! Mu Xiong took a step forward as a gigantic sword appeared behind him, floating in the air. The surrounding sword will gushed forth, emitting a terrifying pressure. Nie Tian could not help but be surprised when he felt Mu Xiong's aura. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi were definitely martial arts geniuses. Both of them were First Firmament Holy Disciples, but one of them had Third Firmament Sword aura and the other had Third Firmament Spear aura. Therefore, their combat ability was far stronger than ordinary First Firmament Heavenly Aura warriors. The two of them were going to join forces to kill the black-clothed man. Seeing this scene, Nie Tian couldn't help but be stunned. These three people were obviously here to kill him, but they were fighting each other first. What a joke! The black-clothed man was the one who attacked Ning Ziyu at the auction. He had been following Nie Tian and the others ever since they walked out of the Million Treasure Mall. Nie Tian had already engraved his divine soul mark into the 4 divine soul stones, so he knew that he was following them. He just did not say anything. "Mu Xiong, Shao Qi, are you sure you want to fight me?" The black-clothed man stood in the void, releasing a sinister aura that was violent and sharp. His entire person was like a black storm. His eyes were deep and murderous as he said, "Don't you want to obtain the Saint Rank Life Chant? Before we get the Life Art, we'll kill you first." Shao Qi let out a low roar, his spear aura exploding out. His spear intent was like a bolt of lightning, constantly bombarding the void. "I'll kill you first," Mu Xiong shouted as well. The two of them could tell that the black-clothed man was also coming for Nie Tian. Killing the black-clothed man first would solve a problem. "How dare you!" You two ignorant brats, do you really think I'm afraid of you? The black-clothed man's eyes darkened and he let out a roar. The aura around his body actually increased crazily. The black murderous aura around his body condensed into a real storm, wrapping around his body like a suit of armor. Suddenly, the surrounding air was filled with a terrifying evil chi. It was so strong that it was suffocating. At this moment, the black-clothed man revealed his true strength. Fifth firmament holy disciple. Fifth firmament heavenly aura. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi exclaimed at the same time. The two of them did not expect the black-clothed man to have the strength of fifth firmament heavenly aura. Chapter 3486. Two pieces of trash. Rumble. A violent roar could be heard in the sky. Under the impact of the terrifying storm, the sky changed color and the wind and clouds surged. Kill! Kill! Mu Xiong and Shao Qi both felt threatened, but they showed no signs of fear. Instead, they let out a furious roar and lashed out with their swords and spears. A terrifying sword intent and a powerful spear intent were unleashed, suppressing the space around them. Rumble. Waves of terrifying energy collided in the sky. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi both knew that this was a moment of life and death for them. They could not hold back. Rumble. 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 In the next moment, the three forces collided and a terrifying shockwave spread out as if it was going to drown the entire sky. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and his sword intent surged out to protect the people around him. These three guys were too terrifying. The terrifying impact in the sky was not something that Duanmu Lu and the others could withstand. Bang! Bang! At this moment, a muffled sound was heard in the sky. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's figures flew out at the same time and retreated a few thousand meters. At the same time, the man in black was also forced back and stabilized himself a few hundred meters away. It was obvious that the man in black with the cultivation of Heavenly Aura Stage 5 was the stronger one. Even though Shao Qi and Mu Xiong were at the third heaven of Spear Realm and third heaven of Sword Realm respectively, their combined strength was not as strong as a divine disciple at the fifth heaven of Heavenly Aura. The difference in martial strength could be made up with Spear Dao and Sword Dao. It was a pity that Shao Qi and Mu Xiong were not strong enough in terms of Spear Dao and Sword Dao. Two ignorant brats, do you still want to continue fighting? The black-clothed man suppressed Shao Qi and Mu Xiong, but his face sank as he coldly asked. Shao Qi's face was gloomy and he did not reply. He knew that even if he and Mu Xiong joined forces, they would not be able to kill the man in black. You didn't come here for us, but for Nie Tian, right? Mu Xiong frowned and looked coldly at the black-clothed man. I came to kill him. The man in black smiled coldly and said, I only want his life. The life incantation on him is yours. The man in black was not aggressive. Instead, he wanted to team up with Shao Qi and Mu Xiong. He was indeed stronger than Shao Qi and Mu Xiong, but he wasn't strong enough to instantly kill them. If they continued to fight, even if the man in black managed to kill Shao Qi and Mu Xiong, he would have to pay a considerable price. Needless to say, the man in black had underestimated Shao Qi and Mu Xiong's strength. Sure. Mu Xiong's eyes narrowed slightly after hearing the black-robed man's words. He agreed without hesitation. Shao Qi's face darkened as he nodded. On the other hand, Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he exclaimed in surprise. Just a moment ago, these three fellows were still fighting with their lives on the line. Now they had actually reached an agreement to join forces to kill him. Attack! The black-clothed man suddenly turned around and glared at Nie Tian like a venomous wolf. He roared, and the black storm around his body emitted a terrifying killing chi. Kill! Shao Qi and Mu Xiong moved at the same time, like two raging dragons with murderous intent. They took a step forward, causing the surrounding space to tremble as they charged toward Nie Tian. Bang! Bang! The shadows of the spear were like raging dragons, while the shadows of the sword were like mountains, causing the surrounding space to tremble, as if it was about to collapse. Two terrifying forces pressed down on Nye Tian like thousands of demons dancing wildly. "Back off!" Nye Tian let out a roar and waved his hand. A powerful sword intent wrapped around Duanmu Lu and the others, sending them to a safe place 10,000 meters away. Bang! At the same time, his sword intent burst forth like a tsunami. In the next moment, sword chi soared into the sky. Endless sword intent emanated blinding sword light, making Nye Tian look like an indestructible giant sword of heaven and earth. Kill! The next moment, his eyes flickered and he let out a deep roar, lashing out with the demonic Seven Despair sword. The celestial demon's sword intent emitted a terrifying force, causing the surrounding space to be engulfed by a terrifying murderous intent. How is this possible? The black-clothed man's eyes flickered as he exclaimed in his heart, unable to believe his eyes. Nye Tian's strength had greatly exceeded his expectations. He could feel a strong sense of danger from the burst of sword intent. Boom! Bang! Bang! In the next instant, the three forces collided with one another, causing the surrounding space to tremble violently. However, in the blink of an eye, the shadows of the spear and the sword shattered into pieces. Bang! Bang! Following this, two muffled sounds could be heard as Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's figures were sent flying, leaving bloody trails in the sky. The two of them only managed to stabilize themselves after retreating thousands of meters. Then, they fixed their eyes on Nye Tian, flabbergasted and flabbergasted. They had attacked at the same time to kill Nye Tian, but their attacks were blocked by him with a single slash. Instead, they were severely injured. How is this possible? Nye Tian was just like them, a first-layer heaven aura cultivator, and Nye Tian's sword Dao was only at the surpassing god ultimacy. He had not even reached the sacred realm. Why was Nye Tian able to unleash such a terrifying sword intent in an instant? Mu Xiong and Shao Qi looked at Nye Tian with trembling eyes, as if they were two little lambs that had just been scared out of their wits. What they didn't know was that Nye Tian had used his full strength in that attack. Nye Tian had only used the most ordinary slash. He had not used the Sky Evolution Sacred Spirit and the Omnigeddon Sacred Spirit in his body. If Nye Tian used the Sky Evolution Sacred Spirit and the Omnigeddon Sacred Spirit, his strength would instantly increase by 10 times. Two pieces of trash. At that moment, the black-clothed man let out a low roar. His eyes were extremely gloomy as he moved his body and charged at them. Bang! Bang! Black chi soared into the sky from his body, and a terrifying force could be felt. The murderous aura from his body covered an area of 100,000 meters, turning the area into a stormy land. In the next second, the murderous aura from the black-clothed man formed a terrifying demonic figure. It was tens of thousands of meters tall, as if it was a demon that had been released from a bottomless abyss. This! Shao Qi and Mu Xiong's eyes shuddered upon seeing this, as their hearts were filled with astonishment. If the black-clothed man had unleashed such a force, they would have been dead bodies by now. Kill! In the sky, the black-clothed man let out a deep roar. Following this, a pair of demonic hands came crashing down, and an endless amount of murderous aura surged out like a tsunami, as if it was going to destroy the entire place. Good timing! Nye Tian's eyes darkened slightly, and the corner of his lips twitched. It was not fear that appeared in his eyes, but a strong battle intent. Ever since he became a saint, he had yet to truly fight a decent opponent. When he was fighting against Qianlongxie, he did not use his normal strength. Chapter 3487. Chapter 3482. Chapter 3482. Can you escape? Kill! In the air, facing the terrifying black-robed man, the corners of Nye Tian's mouth curled up into a cold smile. He let out a low roar, and suddenly, sword intent crazily surged out of his body. Like a boundless sea, it enveloped the surrounding void. Immediately after, the demon sword of 7 extinction in his hand slashed across the sky. In an instant, an endless amount of sword intent erupted with an endless amount of murderous energy that swept across the sky. Boom! In the void, a gigantic sword shadow appeared, like an ancient dragon. It rolled out and suddenly released a sword light that was as bright as the sun. It cut through the darkness in the void and rushed towards the gigantic demon shadow. What a terrifying sword will! Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's eyes trembled as they witnessed the scene before them. The sword will that Nie Tian had just unleashed was way too terrifying. It had completely exceeded their expectations. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that this sword shadow was released by a supreme profound sword intent. The black-robed man stared at Nie Tian, his eyes trembling. Then, the demonic shadow around his body released a strange light that spread out like ripples. Outside the demonic shadow, a huge armor was formed. Boom! And at this moment, the gigantic sword shadow descended, landing on the gigantic devil shadow. Instantly, the void trembled, as though the entire world had come to a standstill, as though the world was about to be destroyed in an instant. Bang! The moment the gigantic sword shadow descended, it smashed a terrifying hole into the demonic shadow. A piece of the armor shattered, but the sword shadow was unable to move an inch. Although this sword was terrifying, it was still blocked by the demonic shadow. Boom! In the next instant, the demonic figure raised his arm and grabbed the sword shadow with one hand. He exerted force and the huge sword shadow trembled in the void before shattering into pieces. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, a violent force rushed out, forming a terrifying violent storm in the void, spreading in all directions. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. Nie Tian's figure was sent flying by the violent impact. Good chance. At this moment, Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's eyes shone with a fervent light. With a low roar, their silhouettes moved at the same time. 2 terrifying forces gushed towards Nie Tian. This time, the 2 of them attacked even more ferociously than before, directly using the power of heavenly rhythm. Boom! As Mu Xiong swung his sword, a gigantic shadow of a sword was unleashed, as if it was going to tear the void apart. Roar! As for Shao Qi's spear, it condensed into a terrifying black dragon in the air. Its roar soared into the sky, causing the surrounding space to tremble. These 2 fellows really wanted to obtain the sacred rank life secret art. Although the 2 of them were extremely talented, one was from a third-rate branch of the Divine Emperor family and was not valued by the family, while the other was from the evil dragon tribe that was abandoned by the Sage Realm Dragon tribe. They really needed the saint-level life tactics to increase their strength and prove their worth. However, that sacred world life art had fallen into Nie Tian's hands. They did not want to kill Nie Tian, but for the saint-level life tactics, they had no choice but to kill him. In midair, Nie Tian could feel 2 terrifying auras rushing towards him, causing his eyes to tremble. Teacher! When Duanmu Lu and the others saw this scene, their eyes trembled and they exclaimed, Nie Tian! Ningxiu's eyes were also trembling as she shouted. Under such circumstances, Nie Tian would die beyond the shadow of a doubt. Boom! However, at this moment, Nie Tian's entire body emitted a terrifying sword intent. His sword aura was extremely violent, as if it was going to tear the heavens apart. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi could feel that Nie Tian's sword intent had increased in quality, causing their eyes to tremble. They could not believe that Nie Tian's sword intent had increased to an unbelievable level. However, how could a swordsman's sword intent suddenly increase? Since you want to die, then don't blame me. Nie Tian forcefully stabilized his body with the help of the powerful sword intent. His lips twitched as his eyes emitted a cold, murderous intent. He had used the power of the Sky Evolution Saint Spirit to forcefully increase his sword principle to the first heaven of sword aura. Although the first level of sword rhyme and the transcendence ultimacy were only 1 level apart, The difference between them was like the difference between heaven and earth. They couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. More importantly, Nie Tian was going to kill Mu Xiong and Shao Qi with the power of his sword aura. Boom! In the next instant, a gigantic sword shadow appeared and a sharp aura filled the air. It was as if the heavens and earth could not withstand its sharpness and were about to be torn apart. Boom! Bang! Bang! Then, the sword shadow swept across everything like a wild dragon. Terrifying sword intent swept through everything in its path. The sword shadow and the black dragon could not withstand the power of the sword shadow and collapsed. This! Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's eyes widened as they screamed in shock. Unfortunately, it was too late. Bang! Bang! As soon as the sword shadow landed, two dull thuds could be heard at the same time. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's figures fell to the ground like kites with broken strings. They were like two giant rocks smashing into the ground, causing the ground within 10,000 meters to crack open. How could this be? When the man in black saw this scene, his eyes trembled and he cried out in shock. He had never expected that Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's joint attack on Nie Tian would end up like this. How could Nie Tian's sword intent unleash such a terrifying force in an instant? Everything felt like a dream. However, the murderous aura in the air made him realize that it was not a dream, but reality. Meanwhile, Ning Ziyu and the others were stunned too, unable to speak for a long time. These two fellows are really tenacious. They actually didn't die. At this moment, Nie Tian's figure was floating high in the sky, looking down. The corners of his mouth twitched as he muttered to himself. He could sense that Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's aura were still there. Even though it was weak, it meant that they were still alive. It seemed like a martial artist who had awakened his life meridian had a stronger life force than an ordinary martial artist. I'll leave their lives to you for now. Then, Nie Tian's lips twitched as he locked his gaze on the man in black and said in a cold tone, "It's your turn now. You." The man in black's eyes flickered and his face went blank. It was obvious that he was shocked. At this moment, he finally realized how terrifying Nie Tian was. Let's go. There was only one thought in the man's mind, and that was to escape. His figure moved like a ray of light. Do you think you can escape? Nie Tian sneered. Sword intent erupted from his body like a volcano eruption. In an instant, boundless sword intent surged out and sealed off the surrounding space. Chapter 3488. Wolf Night Mountain Boom. High up in the sky, endless sword will fell, like shackles, instantly locking the black-clothed man. Don't kill me! The black-clothed man felt a strong sense of oppression coming from the surrounding space. His eyes trembled in horror as he cried out in alarm. At this moment, Nie Tian took a step forward and descended from the sky. His eyes were like the eyes of a lone wolf on a cold night, locked onto the man in black. He said coldly, "Give me a reason not to kill you." This black-clothed man was simply too useless. He was clearly at the 5th level of heaven rhythm, but after Nie Tian's sword intent erupted, he was so scared that he didn't dare to resist. If he released 5 heavenly charm powers at the same time, he would definitely be able to fight Nie Tian head-on. But now, he had become Nie Tian's prisoner. At this moment, as long as Nie Tian willed it, the sword intent in the space would be able to instantly mince the black-clothed man into meat paste. However, it was indeed very dangerous just now. If Nie Tian did not have the celestial evolution saint's soul in his body, he would have most likely died at the hands of Mu Xiong and Shao Qi. Ning Zifeng asked me to kill you. I'm just following orders. The man in black stared at Nie Tian in shock. His eyes were trembling as he spoke loudly. Anything else? Nie Tianling sneered. He knew all of this, but it was meaningless to him. Ning Zifeng even asked me to kill Ning Ziyu. The man in black felt Nie Tian's murderous intent. His eyes trembled as he shouted in shock. You still have one last chance to speak. If your words mean nothing to me, then I'm sorry. Nie Tian's lips twitched as he spoke coldly. He already knew that Ning Zifeng wanted to kill Ning Ziyu. There was no need for the man in black to remind him. The black-clothed man's face was filled with astonishment and despair, and he paused for a moment before he said, "You're looking for the heart-devourer Blackstone, right?" Nie Tian frowned and exclaimed in surprise. Then he realized that Yu Rushui must have leaked the matter of the heart-devouring Blackstone. Ning Zifeng would definitely interrogate Yu Rushui for coming out alone with Nie Tian and the rest. Continue. Nie Tian's lips twitched as he smiled cold. "I have the heart-devouring Blackstone." The black-clothed man's eyes trembled. He hesitated for a long time before saying, "You have the heart-devouring Blackstone?" Nie Tian's eyes lit up and his expression changed. He said in a low voice, "Give it to me." The man in black swallowed his saliva and was about to say something when he suddenly felt the killing intent in Nie Tian's eyes. He immediately did not dare to say anything more and took out a black stone. Heart-devouring Blackstone. Nie Tian looked at the Blackstone and his eyes trembled. This black-robed man really had the heart-devouring Blackstone on him. Then, he waved his hand and snatched the heart-devouring Blackstone from the black-clothed man's hands. Then, he asked with murderous eyes, "Who are you?" It was obvious that the black-clothed man was not from the Myriad's treasure merchant guild. Ning Zifeng was a smart man. If he wanted to kill Ning Ziyu, he would definitely look for someone outside and not someone from the Myriad's treasure merchant guild. The black-clothed man should be an assassin hired by Ning Zifeng. What Nie Tian was concerned about was the black-clothed man's true identity. "I was hired by Ning Zifeng to kill Ning Ziyu." The black-clothed man's eyes trembled as he said in horror, "Cherish the opportunity for you to speak." Nie Tian's eyes were cold. He said coldly, "I'm asking you, who are you? What force do you come from?" "I can't say." The black-clothed man's eyes shrunk in horror. He was actually unwilling to speak. "Wolf's Night Mountain." Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and he uttered these words in a deep voice. How do you know?" The black-clothed man's expression changed drastically when he heard this name, and he shouted in horror. He did not expect Nie Tian to know about Wolf's Night Mountain. "You're from Wolf's Night Mountain." Nie Tian's eyes darkened and the corner of his mouth twitched coldly. He said, "Now I'll give you another chance to speak. Tell me, what's in Wolf's Night Mountain?" Wolf's Night Mountain was the name that Yu Rushui told Nie Tian. And now, they were heading to Wolf's Night Mountain. Nie Tian was just bluffing the black-clothed man. He did not expect the black-clothed man to fall for it. It seemed that the force behind the heart-devouring Blackstone was lurking in Wolf's Night Mountain. Nie Tian wanted to know the name of this force. "I can't say." The black-clothed man's expression was aghast, and he still refused to speak. "Since that's the case, I can only send you away." Nie Tian frowned and the corner of his mouth twitched cold. Then, with a thought, the sword essence in the void suddenly became violent. A terrifying strangling force poured into the black-clothed man's body. Bang! In the next moment, the black-clothed man did not even have time to scream before he exploded into a pool of blood in the air. Nie Tian did not want to waste time on the black-clothed man. He would find out what was in Wolf's Night Mountain sooner or later. After killing the black-clothed man, Nie Tian kept the heart-devouring Blackstone and looked at the ground. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's aura had disappeared. It seemed that the two of them had escaped. He did not chase after them. They were just two ants and did not pose a threat to him. "Nie Tian, are you alright?" At this moment, Ning Ziyu came to Nie Tian's side. Her beautiful eyes were trembling and her voice was trembling. She did not expect Nie Tian's combat ability to be so terrifying. "I'm fine." Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "Let's go." Ning Ziyu looked at Nie Tian and was speechless for a long time. Then, the group did not delay and continued their journey towards Wolf's Night Mountain. 3 days later, an endless mountain range appeared in front of Nie Tian and the group. Is this Wolf's Night Mountain? Ningxiu looked at the endless mountain range in front of her with a shocked expression. Duanmu Lu and the others were so shocked that they could not speak. They did not expect Wolf's Night Mountain to be so vast. They could not see the end of the mountain range at a glance. Nie Tian frowned slightly and his expression did not look good. He realized that the entire Wolf's Night Mountain seemed to be shrouded in a strange aura. The existence of this aura made the entire mountain range look like it was shrouded in a thick fog. This aura did not threaten Nie Tian. It only made him feel disgusted. After a while, Ningxiu calmed down and frowned at Nie Tian. Nie Tian, this Wolf's Night Mountain is so big. What are we doing here? The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he said, I'm looking for someone. Find someone? Ningxiu's beautiful eyes trembled. She let out a strange cry and asked, This mountain range is so big. Who are you looking for? Someone very important to me. Nie Tian did not want to say too much to Ningxiu. He smiled faintly and locked his eyes on a small city on the outskirts of the mountain range. The city was actually not small. It seemed to have a circumference of about 1,000 miles, but it was a little small compared to the Million Treasures Mall. Let's take a look at that city first. Nie Tian smiled faintly and prepared to take a look at the city first. Night Wolf Mountain was too big, and without any understanding of the mountain, it was too dangerous to rashly enter. However, at that very moment, Nie Tian suddenly sensed that a few repulsive auras had appeared. Chapter 3489. Forest Wolf City. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he saw the cultivators in black. These people had ferocious gazes and baleful looks on their faces. The killing intent on their bodies was very heavy. Kids, Wolf Night Mountain is a dangerous place. It's not a place you can come to. At this moment, one of the cultivators in black grinned and stared at Ningxiu greedily and wretchedly. Kid, leave this little girl behind. You can take the others and scram. The other black-clothed cultivator, who had a slanted scar on his face, smiled coldly and said to Nie Tian. The scar on his face must have been caused by something special. Otherwise, it wouldn't have left a mark. Nie Tian's face darkened. So these shameless people had their eyes on Ningxiu. From the looks of it, these people were definitely not good people. Moreover, they had a strong smell of blood on them and a strong murderous aura. Nie Tian. Ningxiu felt uncomfortable being stared at by these people and subconsciously leaned toward Nie Tian. She was really worried that Nie Tian would leave her alone. After all, she wasn't familiar with Nie Tian. They could even be considered strangers. Nie Tian's eyes darkened and the corner of his mouth twitched coldly. Of course, he wouldn't leave Ningxiu alone. He would keep Ningxiu by his side and ensure her safety. Even if she was a stranger, Nie Tian wouldn't just stand by and watch. What if I don't? Nie Tian laughed and looked at the scar-faced cultivator with a playful expression. There were a total of 4 cultivators in front of him. 3 of them were at the first level of heavenly rhythm. The scar-faced cultivator was slightly stronger, but he was only at the 2nd level. Nie Tian wasn't afraid of these 4 people. Kid, if you want to be a hero and save the damsel in distress, you have to weigh your own strength. The scar-faced cultivator sneered and said, You've just stepped into the heavenly rhythm realm, right? Do you think you can fight against the 4 of us? Any one of these 3 brothers of mine can easily kill you. Is that so? The corners of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. He raised his eyebrows and his face was filled with disdain. Big brother, it seems like this kid doesn't know what's good for him. A black-clothed cultivator looked at Nie Tian and said with a cold smile, I will make a move and send you off. Sure. Nie Tian smiled faintly. His expression was so calm that it made people's hair stand on end. Courting death. The black-clothed cultivator was thoroughly enraged by Nie Tian. He roared and took a step forward. Suddenly, a terrifying aura burst forth, followed by the appearance of the power of fire, which turned into a sea of fire in the void and pressed down on Nyetian. Pooh! However, at this moment, a murderous sword intent whistled through the air. It was extremely sharp and pierced through the sea of fire. That black-robed cultivator felt an oppressive aura approaching. Then, a sword light flashed before his eyes. Before he could react, his throat was pierced. You! The black-clothed cultivator's eyes trembled as he looked at Nyetian. He exclaimed in horror, but he didn't have the strength to say anything else. His body trembled, and he fell down like a kite with a broken string. Fourth brother! The scar-faced cultivator's eyes trembled violently before he reacted and shouted in horror. Everything that had happened just now had happened in the blink of an eye. He had only seen Nyetian move slightly, and then his companion had been killed. He didn't even see how Nyetian made his move. The horrifying scene was like a dream. At this time, the other black-clad cultivators also came to their senses. They all looked at Nyetian with horrified expressions. Obviously, they were all frightened by Nyetian. "It's time for you to make your move," Nyetian said in a cold tone as he smiled faintly, his eyes sweeping over the scar-faced cultivators. "Brat, you!" The scar-faced cultivator's eyes trembled, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. He originally thought that Nyetian was just a young master of an aristocratic family. He didn't expect Nyetian to be so strong. "If you don't make your move, then it's my turn." Nyetian smiled sinisterly and took a step forward. Sword intent surged all over his body. It seemed to be restrained, but it was actually extremely sharp. It seemed like it would tear the void in the next moment. "You!" The scar-faced cultivator felt the terrifying aura hidden in Nyetian's body. His eyes trembled involuntarily, and he couldn't say anything. "I didn't provoke you. You are the ones who are seeking death." Nyetianling smiled coldly. The sword intent around his body became extremely sharp and terrifying. "Brat, we are from the Seven Wolves mercenary group. If you dare to kill us, the Seven Wolves mercenary group will not let you off." The scar-faced cultivator felt Nyetian's murderous intent and panicked. "It's too late to say that now." With a cold laugh, Nyetian moved. Like a streak of light, he left behind a blood-colored light wherever he went. The three black-clothed men were killed by Nyetian in the blink of an eye without any resistance. They couldn't understand how Nyetian, who was only at the first stage of heavenly aura, could be so terrifying. "You are not weak, but it's a pity that you have provoked someone you shouldn't have." Nyetian smiled faintly and restrained his sword intent, as if nothing had happened. He was only at the first stage of heavenly aura, but if he activated the Celestial Evolution Saint Spirit and the Omniscient Saint Spirit, he could at least fight against a sixth-stage heavenly aura martial artist, or even stronger. After all, not long ago, he had personally killed a fifth-stage heavenly aura martial artist. These four mercenaries were truly unlucky to have provoked Nyetian, a fiendish star. "Nyetian, how can you be so strong?" Ningxiu came to Nyetian's side and couldn't help but ask. Nyetian was only at the first stage of heavenly aura, so how could he easily kill opponents of the same level? "I'm talented." Nyetian smiled and said, "Let's go to the small city first." Then, they arrived at the small city outside the Wolf's Night Mountain. The Forest Wolf City. Nyetian's eyes narrowed as he looked at the small city, and a playful smile appeared on his face. Although he had yet to enter the city, he could smell an extremely strong murderous aura from the city. "Nyetian, this city looks so gloomy. Are we really going to enter?" Ningxiu also felt the murderous intent and asked with trembling eyes. "Imagim." Nyetian nodded and walked towards the city gate. This city was different from other cities. There were no city guards, and everyone could enter and exit freely. After entering the city, Nyetian immediately felt that the murderous intent in the air was even stronger. It was as if the entire city was filled with a strong smell of blood. That smell of blood was suffocating. "Teacher, there's something wrong with this city." Duanmu Lu looked around cautiously and secretly transmitted his voice to Nie Tian. "MHM." Nie Tian nodded slightly and didn't say anything. After a while, they arrived at the city and there were more and more people around them. Nie Tian noticed that everyone's eyes were gloomy and filled with murderous intent. Nie Tian's face was gloomy and he secretly reminded the others to follow him. Ningxiu and the others approached Nie Tian but didn't dare to go too far. Chapter 3490. The Killing Rules, Teacher. Duanmu Lu also noticed that something was wrong and secretly transmitted his voice to Nie Tian. "I know," Nie Tian responded. His eyes narrowed and his expression turned ugly. At this time, the surrounding people slowly dispersed, distancing themselves from Nie Tian and the others. Then, 4 masked martial artists in black arrived. Each of them released a powerful aura and surrounded Nie Tian and the others. Nie Tian. Ningxiu couldn't help but panic and tightly leaned against Nie Tian. "I'm here, don't be afraid," Nie Tian said lightly, then glanced at the 4 masked martial artists and asked, "What can I do for you?" One of the masked martial artists, who seemed to be the leader of the 4, stepped forward and asked in a deep voice, "Are you guys new here?" Nie Tian nodded and secretly spread out his divine sense. He scanned the 4 masked martial artists and found that they were all at the 3rd level of heavenly charm. After all, the 7th sacred world of cultivators was only a primary sacred world. The strength of the martial artists here was generally not strong. Occasionally, a heavenly mandate martial artist would appear, but that was already considered very strong. The masked martial artist sneered and asked coldly, "Kid, don't you know the rules of Forest Wolf City?" "What rules?" Nie Tian was stunned for a moment and asked with a frown. "Ah." The masked martial artist's wolf-like eyes flickered. He laughed and said, "Kid, you don't know the rules of Forest Wolf City, yet you still dare to enter. Are you sure you're not courting death?" As soon as his words fell, the surrounding crowd suddenly burst into laughter. "Ha ha! This kid doesn't know anything, yet he still dares to come to Forest Wolf City. What an idiot! Swaggering into Forest Wolf City like this, what does he think this place is?" The entire Night Wolf Mountain is a forbidden area of the 7th sacred world of cultivators. Forest Wolf City is the gate of Night Wolf Mountain. How can outsiders casually enter? As everyone spoke, they looked at Nie Tian as if they were looking at an idiot. At this moment, in their eyes, Nie Tian was an idiot. Nie Tian's gaze swept across the crowd, and his face was incomparably gloomy. "Kid, let me tell you. The Forest Wolf City is known as the City of Slaughter. Every single person here has blood on their hands." At this moment, the masked martial artist spoke again and said in a deep voice, "Forest Wolf City is not a place for you aristocratic children to train." Nie Tian frowned and his face darkened. It seemed like these people treated him as a disciple of an aristocratic family who came out to gain experience. Forest Wolf City doesn't welcome strangers. The masked martial artist stared at Nie Tian with a gloomy gaze and said, "If you want to stay in Forest Wolf City, then you must abide by the rules here." "What rules?" Nie Tian frowned and asked again. "Rules for killing." The masked martial artist smiled cold and said, "Anyone who enters Forest Wolf City must kill 1 person. "What do you mean?" Nie Tian frowned and couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. He didn't quite understand. "It's very simple. Since the 5 of you have come to Forest Wolf City, you must kill 5 people from Forest Wolf City. This way, the number of people in Forest Wolf City will not increase or decrease," the masked cultivator said with a cold smile. "Huh!" Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he finally understood. It turned out that this so-called killing rule was for people who entered Forest Wolf City to kill other people from Forest Wolf City. For example, when Nie Tian's group of 5 came to Forest Wolf City, they must kill 5 people from Forest Wolf City. Only then would they be able to stay in Forest Wolf City. This rule was a bit strange. It was simply forcing people to kill. "Kid, it's not too late to make a move now. At this time, the masked martial artist smiled coldly and swept his gaze across the crowd. You can kill these people who are looking at you as long as you can. When the crowd heard the masked martial artist's words, they couldn't help but tremble. Many people's faces were filled with fear, and they couldn't help but take a step back. Most of the people present were martial artists below the sage realm. Only a small portion of them were at the heavenly Yun realm. Even in the holy world, not everyone had the strength to advance to the sage realm. Only martial artists with outstanding talent could reach the sage realm. What if I don't kill? The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he looked at the masked martial artist in front of him, and asked with a smile. If you don't kill, then you can only be killed. The masked martial artist smiled cold, and the murderous intent in his eyes intensified. It was obvious that if Nie Tian didn't kill others, he would directly kill Nie Tian. You can try. Nie Tian smiled faintly, but the corner of his mouth was raised with a cold, murderous intent. He didn't want to kill others, but if these masked martial artists wanted to kill him, he wouldn't be polite. Kid, do you want to fight us? The masked martial artist smiled coldly and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. I won't kill others, but if you want to kill me, I don't mind killing you. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, After all, you are also people of Forest Wolf City. You're courting death. The masked martial artist was completely enraged. With a low roar, his aura suddenly surged and the power of a third-layer Heavenly Yun holy disciple surged into the surrounding void. So strong! The surrounding people exclaimed in shock and retreated one after another. You think I'm afraid of a third-layer Heavenly Yun cultivator? Nie Tian smiled coldly. He wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he took a step forward and the blue stone ground under his feet collapsed. I'll kill you! The masked martial artist was enraged. With a roar, he struck out with his palm. Suddenly, an endless amount of power was released from the void and condensed into a terrifying palm shadow that pressed down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian frowned and his expression changed slightly. His eyes were filled with coldness. Boom! In the next instant, his entire body's aura exploded. A huge sword aura shot up into the sky like a giant dragon, extremely violent. Bang! Then, the sword shadow appeared and shattered the palm shadow, then it pressed down on the masked martial artist. Ah! In an instant, the masked martial artist felt a terrifying power rushing towards him. His eyes trembled and he screamed in fear. However, in the next moment, the sword shadow fell and his body was engulfed by it. Not even his bones were left. The eyes of the crowd trembled violently. Their faces stiffened and were petrified on the spot. The scene fell into a dead silence. The air was filled with the stench of blood. Who would have thought that such a young martial artist would have such terrifying strength that he could kill a third-layer Heavenly Yun cultivator in an instant? Nie Tian's strength could be said to be world-shocking. Only after a long while did the crowd snap back to their senses. Fear filled their eyes as they looked at Nie Tian. Nie Tian's face was calm as a cold smile appeared on his face. This masked martial artist's strength was the same as Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's, but his combat strength was far weaker than theirs. After all, Mu Xiong and Shao Qi were genius martial artists who had awakened their lifeline. Chapter 3491. The entire city shook. The masked martial artist stared at Nie Tian with a panicked expression on his face. He could not believe that someone dared to kill a Forest Wolf guard in Forest Wolf City. At this moment, the crowd looked at Nie Tian and seemed to recall something. Their expressions were filled with panic. Oh no! This kid killed a Forest Wolf guard. The Forest Wolf guards are the guards of Forest Wolf City. This kid might not know how much trouble he has gotten himself into. I've stayed in Forest Wolf City for tens of thousands of years. This is the first time I've seen someone kill a Forest Wolf guard. He's just a guard. So what if he killed him? Nie Tian looked at the other Forest Wolf guard. When he heard the crowd's discussion, the corner of his mouth twitched a little, as if he didn't think much of it. "Kid, you're dead." The forest wolf guard looked at Nyetian. Although he had a ferocious expression, he did not dare to step forward. Instead, he retreated. "Is that so?" Nye Tianling chuckled with a gloomy expression. "Blow the forest wolf horn." At this moment, the forest wolf guard looked at the other forest wolf guard behind him and shouted. The other forest wolf guard's eyes trembled. He immediately reacted and took out a black horn and blew it. Woo! The forest wolf horn sounded like the howl of a wolf. It was deep and distant and instantly spread across the entire forest wolf city. At the same time, all the forest wolf guards in Forest Wolf City heard the sound of the horn. Boom! 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 In the next moment, one terrifying aura after another rose into the sky and shot towards the location where Nye Tian and the others were. Nye Tian frowned as his expression flickered. He saw figures in black appearing in the void around him. It was as if dark clouds were surging in the sky and pressing down on him. The crowd was shocked and panicked when they saw this. The forest wolf horn was blown, indicating that the entire city was under martial law. This time, all the guards of Forest Wolf City were here. "Teacher!" Duanmu Lu's eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he couldn't help but panic. "Don't panic," Nye Tian replied calmly, his face determined. He really did not expect that the death of a forest wolf guard would actually alarm the entire Forest Wolf City. A moment later, countless figures in black appeared in the surrounding void. They were all forest wolf guards. At a glance, there were at least 8,000 of them. And these forest wolf guards were all heavenly charm experts. Nye Tian frowned slightly. A tiny forest wolf city actually had so many heavenly charm realm powerhouses. This was out of his expectations. At this moment, he could clearly feel the terrifying pressure in the air. With so many heavenly rhythm experts, just the aura they emitted was already very terrifying. Nye Tian released the sword intent in his body to protect Ning Ziyu, Duanmu Lu, and the others. Without his protection, Ning Ziyu and the others would not have been able to withstand the pressure in the void. Nye Tian squinted his eyes and looked into the void with an ugly expression. He was indeed too careless this time. He was surprised that the death of a forest wolf guard could cause such a huge commotion. But facing the scene before him, he wasn't too worried. Although the aura of these forest wolf guards was very strong, if they really fought to the death, Nye Tian still had a chance to escape. How many years has it been? The forest wolf bugle horn has sounded again. At this moment, a deep voice came from the void. It was extremely cold and emitted a chilly killing intent. Then, a gray-robed elder appeared and stood in the void. His aura was like a mountain, majestic and powerful. His eyes were fixed on Nye Tian and he said cold, "I didn't expect the person who killed the forest wolf guards to be a brat who's still wet behind the ears. Looks like the forest wolf guards, who haven't experienced a war for many years, have been at ease for too long. Who are you?" Nye Tian looked at the gray-robed elder and asked in a deep voice. "I am the deputy city lord of Forest Wolf City, Lu Lianshan." The gray-robed elder, Lu Lianshan, said in a deep voice, "And who are you, brat?" It seemed that Lu Lianshan was afraid of something and was very careful. "I'm Nye Tian. I've just arrived at Forest Wolf City and don't know the rules of Forest Wolf City. If I've offended you in any way, please forgive me, City Lord Lu," Nye Tian said in a deep voice as he saw Lu Lianshan's fear. "Offended? Forgive?" Lu Lianshan laughed and said, "Nye Tian, do you think you can forgive me for killing the guards of Forest Wolf City? Do you know that in the hundreds of thousands of years since the establishment of Forest Wolf City, no Forest Wolf Guard has ever died in Forest Wolf City? If you want me to forgive you, then how will I explain to the 8,000 Forest Wolf Guards behind me?" Nye Tian frowned and his face darkened. It seemed that the Forest Wolf Guards were very united. This kind of unity did not seem like a guard, but more like an army. Soldiers and martial artists were the most sentimental. They trusted each other very much and could entrust their lives to each other. The death of a forest wolf guard alarmed the entire forest wolf city. It was indeed the style of an army. "Nye Tian, you will definitely die today," Lu Lianshan said in a cold voice. His eyes were filled with killing intent. "City Lord Lu, aren't you afraid that I'm from a major clan?" Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly as he asked indifferently. "Nye Tian, it seems that you don't understand Forest Wolf City and Wolf Night Mountain at all." Lu Lianshan smiled cold and said, "You killed a forest wolf guard. Even if you're from a major family, you won't be able to escape death today." Nye Tian heard Lu Lianshan's words and could not help but narrow his eyes. In his opinion, the entire Forest Wolf City was not very strong, but Lu Lianshan did not seem to care too much. It seemed that there was a major power supporting the Forest Wolf City from behind. "City Lord Lu, I'm sorry. I don't plan on dying here." At this moment, Nye Tian smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth curling up into a strange smile. Boom! In the next instant, his entire body surged with a powerful sword intent, soaring up to the 9 heavens. The sharpness of the sword intent seemed as though it wanted to slash apart the 9 heavens. Lu Lianshan's eyes trembled as his expression sank. He did not expect that Nye Tian would still choose to forcefully rush out in the face of so many forest wolf guards. At this moment, Nye Tian's silhouette flickered as he activated the 9 extreme levels. Ning Ziyu and the rest disappeared, after which a pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back. Like a giant bird, he soared up into the sky, charging towards the forest wolf guards. "Stop him!" Lu Lianshan's eyes darkened as killing intent flashed in his eyes. Chapter 3492. Forest Wolf Boundary Nye Tian, who was in midair, suddenly felt a terrifying suppressive force. His eyes darkened and his expression changed. In an instant, he felt a frightening spirit power enveloping him from all directions like a giant invisible hand, completely trapping him. In an instant, the space around him was sealed and he felt powerless. He had never imagined that the forest wolf guards would actually be able to form such a terrifying barrier in an instant. The power of the boundary covered the sky and earth, and there was no way to avoid it. Boom! In the next moment, the ward suddenly trembled, and a terrifying force was unleashed from the void, condensing into a huge, murderous wolf, which pounced towards Nye Tian with ferocious force. Oh no! Nye Tian immediately felt a strangling aura coming at him, causing his pupils to shrink, and he couldn't help but cry out in alarm. He could feel that the giant wolf contained a terrifying power. If he was hit directly, even he would be seriously injured. Celestial Evolution Saint Spirit Open. In an instant, Nye Tian reacted and the Celestial Evolution Saint Spirit in his body released the Celestial Evolution Saint Power, causing the sword will in his body to soar to the maximum. The swift and fierce sword intent was like numerous sharp blades that forcefully tore apart the confined space in the surroundings. Sacred Heaven-defying sword, Sky Sword reverses the sun. In the next instant, Nye Tian roared and slashed out with his sword. The violent sword's shadow was like a mad dragon that rushed towards the giant wolf. Boom! Boom! Then, the two terrifying forces collided and it was clear who was stronger and who was weaker. Nye Tian's sword shadow could not block the giant wolf and collapsed. Roar! In the next instant, the giant wolf let out a low growl in the void and pounced towards Nye Tian. Bang! At the critical moment, Nye Tian activated the shield of the Star Soul. There was a muffled sound in the void and his body was hit by the giant wolf. He fell to the ground like a meteorite. Boom! A deafening rumble echoed out as a huge crater appeared in the ground. Nye Tian's body sank deep into it. The power of the giant wolf was too terrifying. Even if Nye Tian activated the Sky Evolution Saint Soul Sword, he still could not block it. However, that sword had blocked the giant wolf's attack, and greatly weakened its offensive power. Nye Tian stood up. There were several wounds on his body, but his aura was still sharp. He was not seriously injured. How is this possible? At this time, Lu Lianshan looked at Nye Tian, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble. He cried out in shock, and his eyes trembled. His face was filled with disbelief. He had never imagined that Nye Tian could actually break through the enchantment's control. The barrier was so powerful that even a 9th-stage heavenly charm cultivator might not be able to break it. And Nye Tian was only at the first level of Heaven Yun. How could he break it? It seems that I've underestimated you. At this time, Nye Tian said in a low voice. He stomped on the ground and his silhouette shot up into the sky. His eyes were like the eyes of a venomous wolf. Nye Tian, your strength has astonished I. Lu Lianshan said in a cold tone. His eyes twitched a few times. Nye Tian let out a cold laugh and said, Is that so? You'll soon see something that will amaze you even more. As soon as he finished speaking, Nye Tian's eyes darkened as he stared at the giant wolf in the sky. Roar! The giant wolf seemed to have smelled the killing intent coming from Nye Tian. It let out a low growl and immediately moved. Like a small mountain, its whole body emitted a terrifying evil aura. Good! Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and the sword aura he emanated became even more terrifying. Waves of terrifying sword intent formed a storm of sword intent around him, as if they were going to tear everything in their path apart. Lu Lianshan's eyes widened. He couldn't believe his eyes. Nye Tian's sword intent skyrocketed once again. He was wondering why Nye Tian's sword intent skyrocketed all of a sudden. But now Nye Tian's sword intent skyrocketed for the second time. He was not a swordsman, so he couldn't see through Nye Tian's sword realm. But he knew that a swordsman's sword intent would only fluctuate slightly. It was too strange for Nye Tian's sword intent to skyrocket twice in a row. He could feel that two terrifying forces had awakened in Nye Tian's body. Nye Tian had activated the Sky Evolution Saint Spirit and the Myriad Calamity Divine Spirit at the same time. His sword realm had reached the third layer sword aura realm. Die! In the next moment, Nye Tian let out a bellow and made his move. His sword intent filled the entire sky, sweeping everything in its path. In the next moment, a terrifying sword shadow cut through the air and shot towards the giant wolf like an enormous waterfall. Boom! Bang bang bang! Following that, under the countless gazes, the sword image powerfully landed on the huge wolf's body. The air trembled, and after that, the huge wolf's body was actually unable to withstand the attack. With a loud bang, the huge wolf's body collapsed, turning into numerous spirit formation runes that dissipated in the air. Lu Lianshan was dumbfounded by the scene in front of him. His eyes trembled, and he was speechless. A martial artist at the first level of the heavenly charm realm actually destroyed the boundary forest wolf. Was he dreaming? Nye Tian was right. Lu Lianshan was even more amazed by the strength he had just displayed. Goodbye. At this moment, a cold smile appeared at the corner of Nye Tian's mouth. The wings on his back suddenly flapped, and he abruptly accelerated, soaring high into the sky. Boom! In midair, he released a huge amount of dragon aura. A terrifying sea of dragon aura appeared behind him. Suddenly, the dragon aura and the power of lightning surged in the air, as if they were going to devour the heaven and earth. Dragon aura! Lu Lianshan's eyes trembled as he shouted in shock. He had never expected that Nye Tian's body contained such a huge amount of dragon aura. Dragon aura was the most fearful of dragon aura. Dragon aura itself could greatly weaken space. Normally, a barrier was formed by confining a piece of space. It was obvious that Nye Tian was well versed in this. At that moment, he was going to use the dragon aura to break the barrier. As long as he could break the barrier, he would be able to escape. Don't let him touch the barrier. In an instant, Lu Lianshan reacted and shouted in alarm. But it was too late. Roar. A giant red dragon appeared in Nye Tian's body. With a roar, the power of lightning surged in the air and charged at the barrier. Kaboom! In the next moment, the giant dragon charged at the barrier. A huge amount of dragon aura exploded, and a hole was created on the barrier. Oh no! Lu Lianshan's eyes trembled. The fear in his heart was written all over his face. Do you think you can leave just like that after killing the people of my forest wolf city? However, at that moment, a deep and murderous voice sounded in the air. Then, a black silhouette appeared, standing in the air like a giant mountain. City Governor. Lu Lianshan's eyes lit up when he saw the figure in black. Chapter 3493. Forest Wolf Curse. Seal. Lu Lianshan saw the black-clothed man high in the sky. His eyes instantly became fiery, and he shouted in surprise. He did not expect that the city lord of the Forest Wolf City would appear in person at this critical moment. Huh! Nye Tian looked at the black-clothed man who suddenly appeared and felt the violent aura of the latter. His eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he was very shocked. The black-clothed man was not tall, and he was even a little short. However, the aura of his body was very terrifying, and the terrible power impacted the void as if it was going to tear the world apart. The strength of this person was far above the forest wolf guards. He was definitely a heavenly mandate realm warrior. Rush out! But at this time, Nye Tian did not care too much. His eyes slightly darkened, and with a low roar, he rushed toward the gap in the barrier. He had to rush out of the barrier. This was his only chance of survival. Stay here. At the same time, the city lord of the Forest Wolf City roared and slammed his hand down. Suddenly, the void around him sank as if the whole world was about to collapse. In the next moment, a huge handprint appeared, rolling up the dark clouds in all directions and pressing down on Nye Tian. Nye Tian's eyes slightly narrowed, and then his expression changed. The strength of the city lord of the Forest Wolf City was too strong, far beyond his expectations. The city lord is coming personally. This kid can't escape. Lu Lianshan saw this scene, and his eyes slightly trembled. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he murmured. Even if Nye Tian could break the forest wolf barrier, there was no way he could escape from the city lord of the Forest Wolf City. Fight! At this time, Nye Tian's eyes suddenly darkened. He roared in his heart, and then the 9 heavenly shackles in his body were directly released. Whoosh! The 9 shackles, like 9 giant snakes, crazily rushed in the void, blasting toward the huge handprint. The city lord of the Forest Wolf City saw that Nye Tian dared to rush over, and his eyes turned cold, and he said coldly, "Little ant, don't overestimate yourself." He absolutely did not believe that a mere first-tier heavenly charm holy disciple could compete with him, a first-tier heavenly mandate realm saint master. Saint and sacred expert, the difference of a single word was like the difference between heaven and earth. Nye Tian was an entire major realm away from him. Even if he had heaven-defying talent, he was absolutely unable to contend with him head-on. Bang! Just at this moment, the 9 heavens Tao shackles gathered together like a sharp awl that slammed against that gigantic palm print. The void rumbled. However, that palm print merely froze for a moment, without being damaged in the slightest. The difference in strength between the first level of Heavenly Yun and the first level of Heavenly Mandate was too great. Even the power of the Way of Heaven could not make up for this difference. Accept your fate, Ant. The cold city lord laughed coldly. His hand floated in the air and abruptly pressed down, causing the gigantic palm imprint to sink down. A thunderous sound rang out as the 9 heavenly Tao shackles were shattered by the impact. However, at this moment, the corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. He murmured, "I, Nye Tian, only recognize myself, not fate." As soon as he finished speaking, his right eye suddenly trembled, and suddenly, the extreme demon destructive seal appeared. Then, a terrifying eye power surged out and condensed into an eye power blade in the air. The eye power blade was extremely sharp. The heavenly Tao shackles were only used to effect that gigantic palm print. The extreme demon destructive seal was the real power used to break that palm print. Up in the sky, the Sun Lang City Lord could not help but let out a cry of surprise when he felt a terrifying wave of eye power. Bang! At that moment, a dull thud could be heard as a gap with a radius of a few meters appeared on the giant palm print. Following this, a blade made of eye bloodline power whizzed out and slashed toward the City Lord of Sun Lang City. Puff! The Sun Lang City Lord's eyes froze slightly, and he instantly reacted by moving his body to the side. The eye power blade flew past his face and left a bloody wound on his face. The wound was so deep that the bone could be seen, and half of his face was dyed red. The shocking scene made Lu Lianshan's eyes tremble. He let out a strange cry, but he was unable to say anything. The expressions of the others also changed, and they were all stunned. No one had expected such a scene to unfold. At this moment, a figure dashed out from the gap on the gigantic palm print. A pair of glittering wings appeared on his back, and with a flap, he turned into a ray of light and dashed toward the sky. Damn it! The Sun Lang City Lord's expression sank as he reacted. His eyes were bloodshot like those of a venomous wolf, and he let out a deep roar like a wild beast. However, at this moment, Nie Tian's figure was already several tens of thousands of meters away. The Sun Lang City Lord never imagined that Nie Tian would be able to break through his palm print. How could a first-level heavenly rhythm martial artist have such powerful strength? You want to leave after killing my Sun Lang guards? In your dreams. The next moment, the Sun Lang City Lord's pupils contracted, and his entire body became extremely evil. An extremely dark power was being released from his body. Sun Lang Curse Seal. Lu Lianshan's eyes trembled when he saw this scene from afar, as if he had seen something extremely terrifying. He exclaimed, "Lord City Lord, don't be rash." However, it was too late. The Sun Lang City Lord's eyes instantly changed. They were no longer a pair of human eyes, but a pair of wolf eyes. At the same time, his face changed as well. In an instant, it turned into the face of a wolf. To be more precise, this face was 30% human and 70% wolf. His body also changed. In an instant, it expanded several times, and his 4 limbs turned into wolf arms. Black bristles grew all over his body, and they stood upright like sharp blades. The Sun Lang City Lord had transformed from a human into a wolf in an instant. Or rather, it would be more accurate to call him a Lekan. The eyes of the forest wolf guard trembled at the sight of this. His expression was one of extreme shock. Clearly, he was frightened. Lu Lianshan was also dumbfounded. His mouth was wide open, but he couldn't make a sound. He never expected that the Sun Lang City Lord would activate the Sun Lang Curse Seal in order to capture Nie Tian. At the same time, Nie Tian, who was running at full speed in midair, suddenly sensed a terrifying evil aura approaching from behind. His expression flickered involuntarily. He turned around abruptly and saw a giant black wolf that was nearly 10 meters long charging towards him. His expression changed once again. The huge wolf released a terrifying dark power from its body, and it kept attacking the void like a small black mountain. Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly as he sensed the energy fluctuations in the air. He was extremely shocked. After the Sun Lang City Lord turned into a Lekan, his strength skyrocketed dozens of times. What was more terrifying was that the huge wolf was extremely fast. It was like a black lightning bolt, charging at Nie Tian. Chapter 3494. Chapter 3489. Chapter 348. A Battle of Flesh and Blood. Roar. High up in the sky, the huge black wolf let out a bellow as its dark aura skyrocketed. Then, it swung its huge paw, and several sharp black blades appeared out of thin air, each of which was filled with killing intent as they slashed towards Nyetian. Nyetian frowned, and his expression was very ugly. Under such circumstances, he couldn't avoid it at all and could only take it head-on. Divine demon body, open! In an instant, Nyetian didn't hesitate at all. The pupil power in his eyes immediately burst out, breaking through the martial body and opening the divine demon body. The power of the giant black wolf was too terrifying. If Nyetian didn't open the divine demon body, he would definitely be killed by the giant wolf's claw. Let's see if your wolf body is stronger, or if my fiend god body is stronger. The corners of Nyetian's mouth twitched. His figure flashed, and without dodging or dodging, he charged straight at her. Is that kid crazy? Lu Lianshan's eyes trembled when he saw this scene, and he was extremely shocked. He couldn't believe his eyes. Nyetian directly rushed over and wanted to confront the Sin Lang City Lord who had opened the curse seal of the forest wolf. A warrior at the first level of heavenly rhythm, using his flesh and blood to fight against the curse seal of the forest wolf. Wasn't this courting death? One had to know that the strength of the Sun Lang City Lord, who had opened the curse seal of the forest wolf, was comparable to a warrior at the third level of the heavenly mandate realm, or even stronger. How could Nyetian's strength fight against the curse seal of the forest wolf? Boom! However, right at this moment, Nyetian punched out. Fist shadows rumbled out, and the void seemed to tremble. Boom! Then, the two terrifying forces clashed against each other, causing the space around them to tremble as if it was about to collapse. Boom! The next moment, after a muffled sound, Nyetian's figure took a few steps back, and there was a bloody wound on his chest. Even if he opened the divine demon body, he still couldn't fight against the curse seal of the forest wolf. Lu Lianshan saw this scene from afar, and his eyes trembled, and his face was full of shock. Nyetian faced the curse seal of the forest wolf head-on, but he didn't die. He was only slightly injured. How was this possible? Lu Lianshan couldn't believe the scene in front of him. He really suspected that his eyes were playing tricks on him. Was this silver-haired young man really a first-level heavenly charm martial artist? However, in the next moment, Lu Lianshan sensed that something was amiss. He sensed that there was a dark energy within Nyetian's body that was slowly erupting and awakening. Nyetian's eyes had also turned a strange black. His eyes were as dark as a bottomless abyss. Could it be that this boy also has a curse mark in his body? Lu Lianshan frowned, and his expression suddenly changed. Did he think that Nyetian was also under a curse like the city lord of Forest Wolf City? But even so, the curse mark in Nyetian's body was still excessively powerful. A warrior at the first level of Heaven Charm was facing a heavenly mandate realm powerhouse. No matter how much torture he had to endure, it seemed to be worth it. Lu Lianshan didn't know that the power Nyetian was using at the moment was not a curse mark, but the power of his bloodline. However, Nyetian hadn't fully mastered the bloodline power of the god-demon body. Moreover, the side effects of the god-demon body were also great. Every time it was activated, the martial body would have a period of weakness. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Nyetian wouldn't use the god-demon body. Boom! 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 At this time, there was a constant muffled sound in the void, and the surrounding void trembled as if it would collapse at any time. The figure of a man and a wolf collided with each other high in the sky. This was a battle of flesh and blood, a confrontation of physical strength, an absolute bloody battle between the strong and the weak. But it was obvious that Nyetian's strength was weaker than the Forest Wolf curse seal of the Forest Wolf City Lord. Even though his god-demon body was strong, his strength was too weak after all, and he couldn't exert the true power of the god-demon body. As for the god-demon body of the Forest Wolf City Lord, the power of his wolf body became stronger and stronger. Boom! At this time, another muffled sound rang out, and Nyetian's figure was sent flying thousands of meters away. One of his star souls appeared behind him, and he barely stabilized himself. He was hit head-on by the forest wolf curse seal, and his sternum was directly cracked, and his entire body was about to fall apart. This guy is about to go berserk. Nye Tian stabilized his body, and his eyes darkened as he looked at the forest wolf city lord, his expression extremely unsightly. He could feel that the power of the forest wolf city lord was rapidly becoming stronger, which made the forest wolf curse seal stronger and stronger. On the body of the giant wolf, a violent power surged, and the surrounding space was filled with a bloody power. At this time, the Ghost Emperor's voice sounded, reminding Nye Tian, hold on a little longer. This guy will soon be unable to withstand the power of the curse seal in his body, and he will directly self-destruct. Nye Tian nodded, and his eyes flickered with a strange light. Next, he planned to avoid the frontal attack and waste time with the forest wolf curse seal. Although the godfiend body had a certain impact on his divine sense, he had the eternal night demon fox, so his divine sense would not lose control. Roar. At this time, the giant wolf let out a low roar, and a pair of wolf eyes as red as the dark night, incomparably ruthless. In an instant, the space within tens of thousands of meters was filled with a terrifying murderous intent. Boom! In the next moment, the giant wolf moved like a bolt of black lightning, wildly charging towards Nye Tian. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and the wings on his back flapped, and his figure moved as fast as lightning. However, his speed was still not comparable to the giant wolf's. Although he avoided the direct attack of the giant wolf, he was still affected by the aftershock, leaving a bloody wound on his body, and blood gushed out wildly. At this time, there were already countless bloody wounds on his body, and his whole body was dripping with fresh blood. Fortunately, these wounds did not hurt his vital parts, so they were not fatal. Nye Tian's figure dodged left and right in the air, very nimbly, and avoided the giant wolf's attacks several times. Oh no! At this time, Lu Lianshan's expression began to become uglier and uglier, and he thought to himself, if this continues, the city lord's forest wolf curse seal will go out of control, and the city lord's life will be in danger. He never expected that even the forest wolf city lord, who had activated the forest wolf curse seal, would not be able to kill Nye Tian after such a long time. Hurry up and get the eldest young mistress. Lu Lianshan's eyes trembled, and he exclaimed in his heart. His figure moved, and he prepared to leave. Father! However, at this time, a clear voice sounded in the void, and then a woman in green appeared in the void. Her eyes flickered, and she seemed very nervous. The woman in green looked very young, but her actual age should be less than 1,000 years old. Her face was very delicate, but compared to ordinary women, it was less gentle and more heroic. Eldest young mistress. Lu Lianshan's eyes trembled when he saw the woman in green, and he exclaimed. Chapter 3495. 9 Leaves Duckweed. At this moment, Nye Tian also noticed the lady in green in the sky. He frowned and looked over. He was shocked. The lady in green looked very young, but she was very strong. She had reached the 8th stage of heaven rhythm. At her age, she was already at the 8th stage of heaven rhythm. Her talent was shocking. Miss. At the same time, the 8,000 forest wolf guards saw the lady in green. Their expressions changed, and they greeted her respectfully. The lady in green furrowed her brows and stared at the forest wolf city lord, who was in the cursed body of the forest wolf. Roar. At that moment, the huge wolf let out a bellow and charged towards Nye Tian like a bolt of lightning. Stop! At the same time, the lady in green roared. 9 green leaves appeared in her hand and linked together. It was very strange. In the next moment, she struck out with her palm. Immediately, 9 green leaves enveloped the giant wolf. Like a chain, they forcefully wrapped around the giant wolf. Nye Tian's pupils constricted as he was taken aback by what he was seeing. It was as if the 9 green leaves contained a special power that could restrain the cursed body of the forest wolf. Roar. But in the next second, the giant wolf went berserk. With a growl, a terrifying power was released from its body, and it broke free from the green leaf. Immediately after, the giant wolf suddenly turned around and locked its murderous eyes on the woman in green. Its murderous intent was thick. "Father, it's me, Ah Seong." The green-robed woman's beautiful eyes trembled as she shouted, "Roar!" But at this moment, the Forest Wolf City Lord had completely lost his mind. Instead, he growled and pounced at the lady in green. The lady in green's eyes narrowed. She tapped the ground with the tip of her foot and several green leaves appeared under her feet. She moved like a wisp of smoke and retreated for a few thousand meters, dodging the giant wolf's attack. What a fast movement technique! Nye Tion's eyes trembled, and he was extremely surprised. Even after activating his fiend god body, he was unable to completely dodge the wolf's attack. However, this green-clothed woman was able to rely on her astonishing movement technique and speed to dodge the wolf's attack. It was truly too shocking. However, at this moment, the giant wolf had already gone berserk and was attacking with all its might. After a while, beads of sweat appeared on the green-clothed woman's forehead, and her movement technique slowed down a lot. Nye Tion frowned. It seemed that the green-clothed woman's wondrous movement technique consumed a great deal of energy and couldn't be maintained for long. If this continued, the green-clothed woman would definitely not be able to hold on. At this time, the green-robed woman was careless, and was struck by a sharp blade released by the wolf's claw. A bloody wound was left on her shoulder, and blood gushed out. "Eldest young lady!" Lu Lianshan and the others cried out in shock when they saw this scene. Lu Lianshan and the 8,000 forest wolf guards stepped forward to help. However, at this moment, the green-clothed woman suddenly waved her hand, indicating for Lu Lianshan and the others to step back. The Forest Wolf City Lord was already in a berserk state. Lu Lianshan and the 8,000 forest wolf guards were completely useless. They would only be sending themselves to their deaths if they stepped forward. In the next moment, the green-clothed woman suddenly looked at Nye Tion with a glint in her eyes and said in a deep voice, "Help me!" Nye Tion frowned and was stunned for a moment. This woman was a little interesting, asking for help so blatantly. At this moment, if Nye Tion didn't help, the Forest Wolf City Lord would be dead for sure, and even the green-clothed woman would be in danger. Moreover, the Forest Wolf City Lord wanted to kill Nye Tion just now. Could it be that Nye Tion wanted to help someone who wanted to kill him? At this moment, Lu Lianshan's voice rang out and he shouted, "Kid, as long as you help eldest young lady, everything that happened before will be written off." He could tell that the only person who could help the green-clothed woman at this time was Nye Tion. Only if Nye Tion and the green-clothed woman worked together could they control the Forest Wolf City Lord. "All right." Nye Tion's eyes narrowed slightly, and the corner of his mouth twitched a little as he nodded. After all, everything happened because of him. If the Forest Wolf City Lord really died, or if he killed too many people, he would also feel uncomfortable. "Help me attract his attention." The green-clothed woman looked at Nye Tion and said in a deep voice. Nye Tion nodded, and then his figure moved like a ray of light, directly rushing towards the giant wolf. "Roar!" The giant wolf was immediately attracted by Nye Tion, and with a low growl, it turned around and rushed towards Nye Tion. Boom! Boom! The giant wolf was extremely violent, and its two giant claws danced wildly in the air, attacking Nye Tion. Nye Tion frowned and his expression changed slightly. His figure instantly retreated to avoid the frontal attack, but a few more bloody wounds appeared on his body. At this time, the green-clothed woman's eyes darkened, and the 9 green leaves in her hand rotated rapidly, forming a green sharp blade. The 9 green leaves were known as the 9 leaves duckweed, and it was a very powerful sacred weapon. The power contained within it could suppress the forest wolf curse. At this time, as long as the green-clothed woman struck the 9 leaves duckweed into the giant wolf's forehead, the latter would be able to stabilize. The green-clothed woman was very nervous. She only had one chance, and if she failed to hit the giant wolf, it would be over. At this time, Nye Tion's figure was dodging everywhere, causing the giant wolf to also run wildly. Under these circumstances, it was very difficult to hit the giant wolf. "Help me stabilize it, don't move recklessly." The green-clothed woman frowned and shouted. Nye Tion glanced at the green-clothed woman and nodded solemnly. Roar! At that instant, the giant wolf let out a deep growl and pounced straight at Nye Tion. Nye Tion frowned his eyebrows, and his lips curled into a cold arc. Following this, his figure moved, and instead of dodging, he dashed toward the giant wolf. Huh! The green-clothed woman's eyes flickered, and she could not help but exclaim. She did not expect Nye Tion to help her stabilize the giant wolf in such a way. Bang! Bang! In the next instant, Nye Tion's figure collided directly with the giant wolf. Two dull thuds were heard in the air, followed by a tremendous force. Nye Tion instantly felt like his bones were about to shatter into pieces. However, he did not back off, and used his flesh to resist the giant wolf's attack. The air froze for a moment, as the man and the wolf clashed with each other, as if time had stopped. Attack! Nye Tion endured the excruciating pain and yelled at the green-clothed woman. Whoosh! The green-clothed woman's eyes flickered, and she immediately made her move. The 9 leaves duckweed turned into a ray of green light and attacked the giant wolf. Puff! In the next instant, under the watchful eyes of countless people, the 9 leaves duckweed turned into a ray of green light and penetrated the giant wolf's forehead. Nye Tion saw the flash of green light in front of him, and his lips twitched slightly as he forced a smile. Chapter 3496. Written off. Nye Tion was in midair when he suddenly felt a murderous intent. His expression changed, and he was horrified. He turned around and saw the figure rushing towards him. It was Lu Lianshan. It turned out that the moment Nye Tion blocked the giant wolf, the green-robed woman was not the only one who made a move. Lu Lianshan also attacked. It was obvious that Lu Lianshan wanted to use this opportunity to kill Nye Tion. At this time, Nye Tion was entangled by the giant wolf and could not escape. Although the 9-leaf duckweed hit the giant wolf, it was not effective immediately. In an instant, Nye Tion fell into a hopeless situation. Die, you brat! Lu Lianshan's fierce roar rang out in the sky. Immediately, a violent force blasted out towards Nye Tion. Nye Tion was seriously injured, and Lu Lianshan was a holy disciple at the 9th level of the heavenly rhythm realm. If this force fell, Nye Tion would definitely die. Stop! Right at that moment, a clear voice rang out, following which, a beam of green light descended from the sky and enveloped Nye Tion like a shield. Bam! In the next instant, the violent force descended, but it was blocked by the green shield and shattered with a loud bang. At the same time, Nye Tion felt the giant wolf's power rapidly weaken, and in the blink of an eye, it returned to its human form. He frowned and hesitated for a moment, but still reached out to catch the Sun Lang City Lord. Then, Nye Tion suddenly turned around, and his eyes released a cold murderous intent as he stared coldly at Lu Lianshan. Brat, don't hurt the city lord. Lu Lianshan's eyes trembled, and he shouted, thinking that Nye Tion was going to kill the Sun Lang City Lord. I'm not as despicable as you, Nye Tianling said coldly and threw the Sun Lang City Lord to the green-robed woman. His eyes were extremely cold as he locked onto Lu Lianshan. In order to get Nye Tion to help, Lu Lianshan had promised Nye Tion that as long as he saved the Sun Lang City Lord, he would write off everything that happened before. But just now, he took advantage of the fact that Nye Tion was entangled by the giant wolf to kill Nye Tion. Such behavior was despicable and shameless. You killed the Sun Lang City Lord, and you almost killed the Sun Lang City Lord. Should I not kill you? Lu Lianshan growled coldly and fearlessly. It's true that I killed the Sun Lang City Lord, but the Sun Lang City Guard wanted to kill me first. Should I just stand still and let him kill me? Nie Tian responded coldly. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he said, "As for the master of Sun Lang City, it was you who wanted to kill me. I just fought back. If I was wrong I will be," Chen said, "and off. Then what right do you have to kill me?" Every word was as firm as steel. Nie Tian could have turned a blind eye to what had just happened and walked away. He risked his life to save the Sun Lang City lord out of kindness. Not only did Lu Lianshan not thank him, but he also wanted to kill him. How could he not be angry? "You!" Lu Lianshan's face froze, and he was speechless. "Uncle Shan, stand down," the lady in green said in a low voice. Lu Lianshan did not give up. He looked at Nie Tian with murderous eyes and growled, "Miss, this kid almost killed the Sun Lang City lord. Let me kill him." "Stand down." The lady in green's face changed, and she suddenly raised her voice. She was obviously angry. Lu Lianshan frowned, and his eyes were full of unwillingness. But he could sense the lady in green's anger, so he still retreated. "You saved my father. No matter what you did before, it is all written off." At that moment, the green-garbed woman turned to Nie Tian and said with a plain tone, "What happened just now was Uncle Shan's fault. I apologize on his behalf. There are still reasonable people in the Forest Wolf City." Nie Tian smiled faintly and nodded slightly. "Did you hear what I said just now? No one is allowed to take revenge on him." The lady in green nodded and looked at the Sun Lang guards around her. Yes. The Sun Lang guards were stunned for a long time, but they finally nodded. "Thank you." Nie Tian's face softened, and he smiled at the lady in green. "You are seriously injured. Follow me back to the Sun Lang City Lord's mansion." The lady in green looked at Nie Tian and said. She was afraid that he would be worried, so she added, "Don't worry. With me here, no one will dare to do anything to you." Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "I'll do as you say." He had just arrived at the Sun Lang City, so there were many things that he did not know. Although the lady in green looked cold, she was actually easy to get along with, so he could ask her about some things. Next, the lady in green asked Lu Lianshan to deal with the scene, and then she brought Nie Tian back to the Sun Lang City Lord's mansion. After arriving at the Sun Lang City Lord's mansion, the lady in green asked Nie Tian to wait for her in the hall, and then she went to deal with the Sun Lang City Lord's mansion. Nie Tian waited in the main hall of the City Lord's mansion for about half an hour before the green-robed woman appeared. In the hall, Nie Tian looked at the lady in green, and finally had a chance to observe her. The lady in green had exquisite features, and there was a heroic spirit between her brows. She was not inferior to men. Moreover, she was very calm, and she gave off a very steady feeling. "Are you all right?" At this moment, the lady in green spoke, but her eyes were surging with unconcealable surprise. She was very surprised that Nie Tian's martial body recovery ability was so terrifying. Previously, Nie Tian was seriously injured, but only half an hour had passed, and Nie Tian's breath had stabilized, as if he had almost recovered. Such a terrifying recovery ability was really shocking. "I'm fine." Nie Tian smiled and said, "My name is Nie Tian. May I know your name?" "Wenren Xiang." Wenren Xiang nodded slightly and said her name, and then said, "Young Master Nie, I'm sorry about what happened before. Uncle Shan was too protective of my father, so he killed you. Please don't take it to heart." "Miss Wenren, you're too kind." Nie Tian smiled faintly and asked, "How is your father? Is he okay?" "Father is a little weak, and he needs to rest for a while." Wenren Xiang nodded with a smile, and then no longer stood on ceremony. She asked, "Young Master Nie, is this your first time in the Sun Lang City?" "Yes." Nie Tian nodded, and without waiting for Wenren Xiang to ask further, he directly said, "Actually, I came to the Night Wolf Mountain to look for someone, but I passed by the Sun Lang City." "Looking for someone?" Wenren Xiang was taken aback, and the corners of her lips twitched slightly. This was the first time she heard of someone coming to the Night Wolf Mountain to look for someone. "Yes, I'm looking for someone." Nie Tian looked at Wenren Xiang, nodded again and said, "To be honest, I'm a martial artist from a territory. I have a friend who was captured by someone with a heart-devouring blackstone when he was in the territory. I heard that you can find a heart-devouring blackstone in the Night Wolf Mountain, is that right?" Then, Nie Tian stared at Wenren Xiang, wanting to see her reaction. Heart-devouring blackstone. Hearing these 4 words, Wenren Xiang's eyes trembled, and her expression changed slightly. "Miss Wenren, you know about the heart-devouring blackstone?" Seeing Wenren Xiang's reaction, Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and he asked in surprise. Chapter 3497. He has no right, the heart-devouring blackstone. Nie Tian looked at the blackstone in Wenren Xiang's hand and was shocked. He didn't expect Wenren Xiang to take out a piece of the heart-devouring blackstone. Why would Wenren Xiang have the heart-devouring blackstone? Could it be that Wenren Xiang belongs to the force behind the heart-devouring blackstone? Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he thought of this. His expression changed as he looked at Wenren Xiang. The heart-devouring blackstone is indeed from the Night Wolf Mountain. However, Wenren Xiang's face was calm without a hint of nervousness. Instead, she smiled and said, "If the person you're looking for is really captured by the force behind the heart-devouring blackstone, then I can only offer you my condolences." Condolences? Nie Tian was startled. His expression darkened as he asked, "What do you mean? Could it be that the Emperor of the Underworld is dead?" The force behind the heart-devouring blackstone is at the Night Wolf Mountain. However, those who are captured by this force must die. The corner of Wenren Xiang's lips twitched as she said in a deep voice. Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he was dumbfounded. It seemed that Wenren Xiang knew the force behind the heart-devouring blackstone very well. He even suspected that Wenren Xiang belonged to that force. Eyebrows furrowed, Nie Tian looked at Wenren Xiang and asked, "Miss Wenren, where did you get the heart-devouring blackstone?" "Nie Tian, you want to ask if I belong to that force, right?" Wenren Xiang smiled and asked in return. "Yes." Nie Tian nodded and didn't hide anything. Since Wenren Xiang had revealed it, there was no need for him to hide anything. "I don't belong to that force, but I know where it is and I can bring you there." Wenren Xiang's eyes flickered as she looked straight at Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes flickered with excitement. "Really?" "Yes." Wenren Xiang nodded, but her expression changed at this moment. She said, "But if you want me to help you, you must do something for me first." "Say it." Hearing Wenren Xiang's words, Nie Tian wasn't angry. Instead, he was very happy. He didn't like to owe others, so he felt more at ease when Wenren Xiang made a deal with him. "Come with me to a duel," Wenren Xiang said word by word, looking at Nie Tian with a pair of downcast eyes. "Sure." Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he agreed without any hesitation. "Aren't you going to ask me what battle I want you to go to?" Wenren Xiang was stunned for a moment, and looked at Nie Tian with some doubt. Nie Tian's straightforwardness was beyond her expectations. "No matter what battle it is, I will definitely help you win." Nie Tian smiled faintly, his eyes surging with extreme confidence. "Very good." Wenren Xiang looked at Nie Tian and nodded. Nie Tian's confidence made her feel inexplicably at ease. "Brat, you sure talk big." However, at this moment, outside the hall, a sharp and mocking voice sounded. Then, a figure in green stepped into the hall. Behind him, there were 3 gray-robed warriors. Nie Tian looked at the figure in green walking towards him. He couldn't help but frown, and his expression was a little ugly. The person who came was a handsome young man. He was tall and straight, and he had an imposing appearance. His aura was released, and he showed off his abilities, giving people a very sharp feeling. However, at this moment, the way he looked at Nie Tian was very unfriendly, and even had a strong hostility and contempt. "Brother." Wenren Xiang looked at the person who came, and she frowned slightly. Then, she introduced him to Nie Tian. "Nie Tian, this is my father's son, My brother, Helian Qingfeng. Nie Tian glanced at Helian Qingfeng, nodded slightly, and didn't say anything. Sister Xiang, who is this kid? Are we going to bring him to the battle in Songlang City? Helian Qingfeng glanced at Nie Tian with cold eyes, and asked with a cold smile. Why not? Wenren Xiang replied coldly, as if she was very cold to Helian Qingfeng. Sister Xiang, did you see clearly? This kid is only at the first level of heavenly charm. If we bring him to the battle, won't we be laughed at by the people of Songlang City? Helian Qingfeng's eyes darkened slightly, and he said coldly. His cultivation is not high, but his battle strength is very strong. Wenren Xiang replied coldly. Battle strength is very strong? Helian Qingfeng sneered, and his eyes sized up Nie Tian and said, a mere first-level heavenly charm trash, how strong can he be? Even if his talent is monstrous, he can at most compete with second- or third-level heavenly charm martial artists. And the martial artists of Songlang City are stronger than our Forest Wolf City. I'm afraid that the weakest among them is close to the 9th level of heavenly charm. Are you planning to let a first-level heavenly charm martial artist fight against a 9th-level heavenly charm martial artist? I've seen Nie Tian's battle strength with my own eyes. I believe that even if he faces a 9th-level heavenly charm martial artist, he definitely won't be weak. Wenren Xiang frowned and said coldly. Helian Qingfeng looked at Wenren Xiang and couldn't help but sneer and said, Sister Xiang, do you think that his battle strength is stronger than mine? Helian Qingfeng was a 9th-level heavenly charm martial artist. He absolutely didn't believe that Nie Tian, a first-level heavenly charm holy disciple, could fight against him, a 9th-level heavenly charm holy disciple. Helian Qingfeng, what do you want? Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes trembled, and she was obviously a little impatient. She asked coldly. Sister Xiang, why are you angry? Helian Qingfeng laughed and said, I just feel that this kid doesn't have the qualifications to participate in Songlang City's arranged battle. I brought 3 friends with me, and they are all at the 7th level of heavenly charm. You can choose one of them to go with us to the arranged battle. Them? Wenren Xiang frowned, and her gaze swept across the 3 gray-robed martial artists behind Helian Qingfeng, and her eyes were a little cold. Helian Qingfeng wasn't in the city before because he went to find these 3 fellows. Do you think that they are more qualified than me to go to the arranged battle? At this time, Nie Tian, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. His gaze swept across Helian Qingfeng and the others, and he asked indifferently. Isn't the answer obvious? Helian Qingfeng laughed and said, You're just a first-level heavenly charm trash. How can you compare to a 7th-level heavenly charm martial artist? Then let's give it a try. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said directly, Let me fight with them. If I lose, I'll be at your disposal. When Wenren Xiang heard Nie Tian's words, her beautiful eyes couldn't help but tremble, and she cried out in shock, Nie Tian. She knew that Nie Tian's strength was terrifying, but the latter had just gone through a big battle, and he was injured. Moreover, his strength hadn't fully recovered. How could he compete with a 7th-level heavenly charm martial artist? In her opinion, Nie Tian didn't even care about his life in order to prove himself. Believe me. Nie Tian, however, had a calm expression. He looked at Wenren Xiang indifferently and nodded with a smile. Wenren Xiang felt the strong confidence in Nie Tian's eyes, and she was stunned for a moment. She couldn't speak for a moment. Kid, who do you want to challenge first? Helian Qingfeng was very pleased at this time, and he looked at Nie Tian provocatively. Chapter 3498. Truly ruthless. Let the 3 of them come at me together. Nie Tian's voice wasn't loud, but when it landed in the ears of everyone present, it was like a bolt from the blue. The lobby immediately fell into a dead silence. Kid, what did you just say? Helian Qingfeng only reacted after a long time. His eyes emitted a sinister light as he looked at Nie Tianling and asked with a smile. I don't want trouble. Let the three of you come at me together. Nie Tian smiled faintly and glanced at the three gray-robed cultivators. At this time, the three gray-robed cultivators reacted. Their eyes trembled and their expressions changed. Kid, you're courting death. A mere first-level heavenly aura trash. I don't know where you get the courage to challenge the three of us. Just a clown trying to please the crowd. Brothers, don't interfere. Let me kill him alone. The three gray-robed cultivators looked at Nie Tian coldly and arrogantly. However, they still had the capital to be arrogant. After all, they were 7th-level heavenly aura cultivators. Nie Tian looked at the three of them and his lips curled into a cold smile. At this time, the three of them were chattering away. In a while, they would know that the real clowns trying to please the crowd were them. Kid, I alone am enough to kill you. At this time, a gray-robed cultivator stood out and looked at Nie Tian with a low and cold expression. Are you sure? Nie Tian laughed, a playful look on his face. Insolence! The gray-robed cultivator roared and immediately stepped out of the lobby. Then, he leaped up into the sky and shouted, Kid, come and die! The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. He walked out of the lobby step by step and rushed up into the sky. Wenren Xiang, Helian Qingfeng, and the others also walked out of the lobby and looked at the two people in the sky. Stinking brat, you're dead for sure. Helian Qingfeng's gaze locked onto Nie Tian from afar. He smiled coldly and thought to himself, Nie Tian, can you really do it? Wenren Xiang couldn't hide the worry on her face. She was very worried about Nie Tian. Although Nie Tian was very confident, his previous injuries were too serious. In less than an hour, how much could he recover? Reckless brat, I'll kill you with one palm. At this moment, the gray-robed cultivator in the sky let out a low roar. After that, he made his move. His aura was as wild as a flood bursting forth. A vast energy surged through the air, as if it wanted to destroy everything. Die. In the next moment, the corner of his mouth curled up into the word kill. After that, he slapped out with his palm. Instantly, the space around him trembled as a terrifying palm silhouette appeared, carrying with it a terrifying destructive force as it rumbled towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as the corner of his lips twitched. After that, his aura erupted like a volcano. A surge of intense soared into the sky, as if it wanted to tear the heavens and earth apart. Bang! In the next moment, the two terrifying forces collided head-on. Immediately, the space around them trembled. Following that, the difference in strength was obvious. The palm silhouette swayed in the air for a moment before it directly crumbled. Bang! After that, with a muffled sound, a gray-robed cultivator was sent flying. Like a falling meteorite, he slammed heavily into the ground. At the moment of life and death, a figure soared into the sky and caught the gray-robed cultivator. However, the huge impact caused him to fall directly. The bluestone floor under his feet immediately crumbled. Damn it! The person who saved the gray-robed cultivator at the critical moment was one of his companions. The latter steadied his body and stared at Nie Tian like a venomous wolf. He didn't expect Nie Tian's strength to be so terrifying. One slash, just one slash, had directly injured the gray-robed cultivator. If the other gray-robed cultivator hadn't acted in time, the gray-robed cultivator would have directly fallen to the ground and died on the spot. How is this possible? The other gray-robed cultivator looked at Nie Tian with a face full of shock. A first-level heavenly rhythm cultivator heavily injured a 7th-level heavenly rhythm cultivator with one slash. Was this really not an illusion? Helian Qingfeng was stunned for a few seconds before he reacted. He looked at Nie Tian with a cold and murderous gaze, as if he wanted to eat someone up. Was Nie Tian's battle strength really as Wenren Xiang said? Could he really fight against a 9th-level heavenly rhythm cultivator? At this moment, Wenren Xiang was also stunned for a long time. Then, a knowing smile appeared on her pretty face. She didn't expect Nie Tian to be able to explode with such terrifying power even though he was seriously injured. Nie Tian was really too terrifying. It seemed that her previous worries about Nie Tian were really unnecessary. And you too, come at me together. At this moment, Nie Tian, who was high up in the sky, looked at the other two gray-robed cultivators and said coldly, "You're courting death." One of the gray-robed cultivators was obviously hot-tempered. He growled and yelled, "Let's attack together and kill this stinking brat." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure suddenly moved and rushed over. While he was still in midair, his aura skyrocketed to the extreme. At this moment, a mysterious aura surged around his body and turned into a terrifying power that was released into the void. Heavenly Rhythm Force. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly as he exclaimed in his heart. Although this gray-robed cultivator was impulsive, he was not stupid. He already knew how powerful Nie Tian was, so he went all out from the start and directly used 7 strands of Heavenly Rhythm Force. 7 strands of Heavenly Rhythm Force was the gray-robed cultivator's limit. In order to kill Nie Tian, he really did everything he could. Wenren Xiang frowned and her expression changed when she saw this. She did not expect the gray-robed cultivator to use Heavenly Rhythm Force. When a Heavenly Rhythm cultivator used Heavenly Rhythm Force, it was actually a desperate fight. This was because once Heavenly Rhythm Force was used, there would be a period of weakness. That gray-robed cultivator used 7 strands of Heavenly Rhythm Force to kill Nie Tian. How ruthless! Boom! In the next instant, the gray-robed cultivator made his move. With a slap, a terrifying palm shadow appeared and caused the void to tremble. Boom! At the same time, the other gray-robed cultivator also made his move. He also used Heavenly Rhythm Force and a terrifying flaming fist shadow appeared, burning everything in its path as it bombarded Nie Tian. Oh no! Wenren Xiang was shocked by the scene in the sky. She knew that things were not looking good for her. She knew that Nie Tian was powerful, but she did not believe that Nie Tian could fight against 2 7th-layer Heavenly Rhythm cultivators with Heavenly Rhythm Force while he was injured. "Brat, you're dead." Helian Qingfeng, who was standing to the side, had a murderous look on his face. His eyes were burning with passion as if he could already see the scene of Nie Tian being killed. He absolutely did not believe that Nie Tian had the strength to fight against the situation before him. At this moment, Nie Tian, who was high up in the sky, did not panic. Instead, the corners of his mouth twitched as the starry sky slash appeared in his other hand. Chapter 3499. Chapter 3494. Chapter 3494. Never break an appointment, When Wenren Xiang and Helian Qingfeng saw the 2 swords in Nie Tian's hands, they couldn't help but let out a cry of surprise. What was Nie Tian trying to do? Using 2 swords at the same time? It wasn't that there weren't any dual swordsmen, but they were all famous sword masters. Could it be that Nie Tian, who hadn't even stepped into the realm of sword rhythm, was going to use dual swords? From Wenren Xiang and Helian Qingfeng's point of view, his actions were no different from seeking his own death. They had never seen a swordsman who had not even reached the realm of sword rhyme being able to wield 2 swords at the same time. Saint Heaven-defying sword, Earth sword devours the moon, Sky sword reverses the sun. At this moment, the corner of Nie Tian's lips twitched. His low and murderous voice echoed through the air. Then, the sword intent from his entire body gushed out. It was obvious that the sword intent was divided into 2 and gathered in his hands. In the next moment, a strange scene took place. Nie Tian wielded the 7 Sutra Demon Sword and the Star Heaven Slash at the same time. In the next moment, 2 sword projections with different auras appeared. Like 2 enormous dragons, they swooped down from the heavens. When Wenren Xiang and Helian Qingfeng saw this scene, their eyes widened. They couldn't believe their eyes at all. What did they see? Not only did Nie Tian use 2 swords, both swords actually had different sword intent auras, and at the same time, they were also different sword techniques. It was extremely rare for a swordsman to be able to wield two swords at the same time. Nie Tian, on the other hand, wielded two swords with completely different auras, and even used different sword technique. Such a scene was too shocking. Nie Tian's understanding and control of sword intent was too terrifying. It could be said that Nie Tian's application of sword intent was so precise that even many sword Dao grandmasters might not be able to achieve it. Just as Wenren Xiang and Helian Qingfeng were shocked beyond words, an even more shocking scene occurred once again. Heaven and earth as one! Nie Tian let out a low roar. Then, the two sword shadows in the void actually combined into one in an instant, condensing into a gigantic sword shadow with an aura that was several times more violent than before. Boom! At this moment, a terrifying sword will rippled out from the void, as though the entire void was about to collapse in an instant. How could this be? One of the gray-robed cultivators, who was closer to Nie Tian, exclaimed in horror when he felt the killing and suppressive force surging over. He couldn't believe that Nie Tian could unleash such a terrifying power. Is Nie Tian really a first-stage heavenly charm martial artist? On the other side, the other gray-robed cultivator felt that something was wrong. His figure flashed as he retreated. Boom! In the next instant the huge sword image descended. The palm image and the flaming fist image were instantly engulfed. Then, the gray-robed cultivator could not react at all and was swallowed up by the sword image. Not even his bones remained. Bang! As for the gray-robed cultivator who retreated in advance, the horrifying sword might struck him and sent him flying, leaving a bloody trail in the air. After a moment, the sword image in the air disappeared and everything returned to normal. However, the void was filled with a sharp sword will aura and the smell of blood. The scene was silent for more than 10 seconds before there was finally movement. Bastard, how dare you kill my people? Helian Qingfeng roared. His entire body was incomparably violent. His eyes were bloodshot, and a violent rage spread in the void, as though it wanted to burn everything. Helian Qingfeng, what are you trying to do? Almost at the same time, Wenren Xiang's face suddenly darkened as she looked at Helian Qingfeng cold. Kill him! Helian Qingfeng roared. Then, his figure moved. He stomped hard on the ground, stirring up a layer of dust. He was like a raging dragon, charging towards Nie Tian. However, in the next moment, Helian Qingfeng's figure froze in the air. He could not move. Huh! Helian Qingfeng suddenly turned around. His eyes were deep and murderous as he locked onto Wenren Xiang. He said coldly, "Let go." It turned out that he had been trapped by Wenren Xiang's 9-leaf duckweed. The 9-leaf duckweed looked very fragile, but it contained extremely terrifying power. Even though Helian Qingfeng was at the 9th level of Heavenly Yun, he could not move at all. Helian Qingfeng, don't force me. Wenren Xiang's eyes were cold and murderous. She spoke in a low voice, threatening tone. There was no way she would let Helian Qingfeng attack Nie Tian. At this moment, Nie Tian had almost exhausted all of his strength after defeating 3 7th-level Heavenly Charm martial artists. In addition, he was previously injured. Suddenly releasing such a huge sword will and using the Celestial Evolution Saint Soul and the Omniscient Saint Soul at the same time had caused his injuries to worsen. If Helian Qingfeng attacked Nie Tian again, the latter would be in danger. For this person, you are going to attack your own brother? Helian Qingfeng's eyes were incomparably cold. There was a murderous look on his face. You forced me to attack. Wenren Xiang responded cold. Then the 9-leaf duckweed tightened, making Helian Qingfeng feel breathless. She was at the 8th level of Heavenly Yun, while Helian Qingfeng was at the 9th level. But if the two really fought to the death, the outcome was unknown. At this time, Helian Qingfeng was restrained by Wenren Xiang and had no strength to resist. As long as Wenren Xiang wanted to, she could kill Helian Qingfeng in an instant. Helian Qingfeng felt the murderous look in Wenren Xiang's eyes and frowned. His expression was very ugly. He knew that this was a moment of life and death. If he made the wrong choice, Wenren Xiang would really kill him. On the surface, he was the adopted son of the Sun Lang City Lord and Wenren Xiang's brother. But in reality, he had another identity. Wenren Xiang did not say it on the surface, but she knew Helian Qingfeng's true identity. It was only for the sake of the big picture that Wenren Xiang and Helian Qingfeng did not fall out. If Helian Qingfeng really wanted to kill Nie Tian, then Wenren Xiang would not hesitate and would definitely kill him. He killed the people I brought. Are we just going to let it go like this? After a moment, Helian Qingfeng calmed down a lot and said with a gloomy face, "It was clearly just exchanging pointers. Why did he have to kill me?" Exchanging pointers? At this time, without waiting for Wenren Xiang to speak, Nie Tian laughed coldly and said, "Did the three of them really think this was just exchanging pointers? Are you blind and can't see anything? Among the three of them, which one of them didn't want to kill me directly? If my strength was a bit weaker, I'm afraid the one who died right now would be me." "You?" Helian Qingfeng looked at Nie Tian and his face suddenly darkened. For a moment, he was speechless. "Helian Qingfeng, if you have the courage, then attack me." Nie Tianling laughed coldly and said with a provocative face. Helian Qingfeng's expression was ugly to the extreme. He turned around and looked at Wenren Xiang. After hesitating for a long time, he finally said, "This matter ends here." Wenren Xiang's gaze darkened slightly. She nodded and carefully released Helian Qingfeng. After Helian Qingfeng broke free, he suddenly turned around and looked coldly at Nie Tian. He said, "Stinking brat, I hope you don't break the appointment with Song Lang City. I want to see just how strong you are." Chapter 3500. "Chief Wolf, that's good," Helian Qingfeng replied coldly. After which, he didn't say anything else. Instead, he glared at Wenren Xiang fiercely before leaving. Wenren Xiang looked at Helian Qingfeng's back. Her pretty face did not look good. After a long time, she sighed softly. "Miss Wenren, thank you for your help just now." Nie Tian looked at Wenren Xiang and bowed slightly to express his gratitude. "You're heavily injured. Go and rest first." Wenren Xiang looked at Nie Tian and said, "The arranged battle with Song Lang City is in 7 days. In these 7 days, don't leave the city lord's residence. Have a good rest." Nie Tian nodded slightly and smiled faintly. He knew that Wenren Xiang was worried that Helian Qingfeng would harm him. As long as he stayed in the city lord's mansion, he would be safe. After that, Wenren Xiang arranged a small courtyard for Nie Tian to rest in. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. In a small courtyard of the city lord's mansion, several figures stood there. It was Nie Tian and the others. "Teacher, are you going to keep the appointment now?" Duanmu Lu looked at Nie Tian, clearly a little worried. "Don't worry, it's just a challenge. It's no big deal." Nie Tian smiled faintly, looking very relaxed. "Little blockhead, how can you not have confidence in your teacher?" Ningxiu laughed and teased him. During these 7 days, Ningxiu had become very familiar with Duanmu Lu and the others. They often joked with each other. Duanmu Lu nodded and didn't say anything. Vaguely, he had an ominous feeling. Nie Tian. At this moment, outside the small courtyard, a clear and familiar voice rang out. Immediately after, 2 silhouettes walked over. It was Wenren Xiang and her father, the city lord of the Forest Wolf City, Wenren Tuesday City Lord Wenren, Lady Wenren. Nie Tian looked at the father and daughter of the Wenren family and smiled faintly. In the past few days, Wenren too often came to see him, and they had become familiar with each other. After Wenren too activated the Forest Wolf Curse seal last time, he had almost recovered after 7 days of recuperation. As for Nie Tian, he had completely recovered a few days ago. His strength had also increased, but he had not broken through yet. After all, he had only come to the Saints' world recently. It would be rather difficult for him to break through. Little brother Nyetian, it's getting late. You should set off now. Chengfin is already waiting for you outside the city. Wenren too smiled faintly and looked at Nyetian. After spending the past few days together, the misunderstanding between him and Nyetian had been resolved. He didn't have any antipathy towards Nyetian. Instead, he would occasionally reveal the intention to rope him in. Unfortunately, Nyetian was stubborn and acted as if he couldn't tell. Yes. Nyetian nodded and said, "Then I'll have to trouble City Lord Wenren to take care of my disciples and the others." This time, Nyetian still decided to let Duanmulu and the others stay after thinking about it. Moreover, in the past few days, Wenren too had opened a special cultivation place in the Forest Wolf City for Duanmulu and the others. Duanmulu and the others cultivated there, and their strength improved very quickly. In just a few days, Duanmulu already showed signs of breaking through to the half-saint realm. Nyetian didn't want Duanmulu to waste his cultivation time. After thinking about it, he still let them stay here. To be honest, Nyetian was a little worried about Wenren Tuesday. However, he was with Wenren Xiang. Even if Wenren Tu really had evil intentions, he should be concerned about Wenren Xiang. Nyetian believed that as long as he had Wenren Xiang by his side, then Duanmulu and the others would definitely be safe. Subsequently, Nyetian warned Duanmulu with a few words and left with Wenren Tu and Wenren Xiang. When the three people came outside the city, Nyetian saw a figure in the distance. It was not unfamiliar. It was Helian Qingfeng. This time, there were a total of 3 people from the Forest Wolf City going to the battle: Helian Qingfeng, Wenren Xiang, and Nyetian. Nyetian was very puzzled. Since it was a battle between 2 cities, why didn't Wenren Tu, the city lord, go? Qingfeng, Xiang or Nyetian, little friend, be careful on the way. This city lord will be in the city, waiting for your victorious return. Wenren Tu's gaze swept over Nyetian and the others. He laughed and said in a clear voice, "Don't worry, foster father. Qingfeng will definitely defeat those Tsanglang City bastards for the Forest Wolf City." Helian Qingfeng nodded with a smile and said with full confidence, "Good, then your father's painstaking efforts for you will not be in vain." Wenren Tu nodded with a smile, but his gaze swept across Nyetian's body strangely. He already completely forgot the battle with Nyetian before, but he heard some of the process from Wenren Xiang's mouth. If Nyetian could really contend with him in the Forest Wolf curse body state, then this battle, the Forest Wolf City would definitely win. At this time, the one who truly made Wenren Tu feel at ease was not Helian Qingfeng, but Nyetian. Following that, Nyetian and the others did not stay any longer. They directly left and set off for Tsanglang City. Along the way, Helian Qingfeng did not say a word. He only looked at Nyetian from time to time with a stern face. Half a day later, the 3 of them arrived outside a small city. The city gate was engraved with 4 big words, Tsanglang City. At this time, high up in the sky outside Tsanglang City, thousands of black-clothed martial artists stood in the void. Their imposing manner was majestic, like a dense dark cloud that wanted to tear apart heaven and earth. And below these martial artists stood a white-haired elder and 3 young martial artists. Junior Helian Qingfeng, the adopted son of the Forest Wolf City Lord, kneels to Lord Wolf Commander. At this time, Helian Qingfeng was the first to fly over. Then, he stood 1,000 meters away and bowed to the white-haired elder. Following that, he actually knelt down. "So it's someone from the Helian family. No need to be overly courteous. Get up. I and your Helian family's Helian Tsongfeng are old friends." The white-haired wolf commander smiled faintly and waved his hand, indicating for Helian Qingfeng to get up and speak. "Many thanks, Lord Wolf Commander." Helian Tsongfeng smiled faintly, bowed and said, "The name that Lord Wolf Commander mentioned is this junior's ancestor." Wolf Commander nodded and didn't say anything else. Then, He looked at Wenren Xiang and Nye Tian. Nye Tian, this is the notary for the battle between the two cities, Lord Wolf Commander. Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes flickered as she secretly transmitted a message to Nye Tian. Junior Nye Tian greets Lord Wolf Commander. Nye Tian understood and smiled faintly, bowed slightly, and expressed his respect in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Junior Wenren Xiang greets Lord Wolf Commander. At the same time, Wenren Xiang also bowed slightly. Wenren Xiang, Wenren Tu's daughter, is indeed not simple. Wolf Commander nodded and said with a smile. Then, he locked his gaze on Nye Tian and couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Then, he twirled his thumb ring and sneered, "What? Has the Forest Wolf City become so weak that they actually sent a first-level heaven rhythm martial artist to the battle?" His words were frivolous and carried a strong sense of contempt. However, at this moment, Nye Tian didn't pay attention to Wolf Commander's words. Instead, his eyes were fixed on the black thumb ring on Wolf Commander's thumb. That black thumb ring was simple and unadorned. To put it bluntly, it was just a black ring. However, that thumb ring emitted an aura that Nye Tian was very familiar with, the aura of the heart-devouring Blackstone. Wolf Commander's thumb ring was actually made of the heart-devouring Blackstone. Chapter 3501. The First Battle, Heart-Devouring Blackstone. Nye Tian's eyes darkened and his expression changed. Wolf C's thumb ring was made from the heart-devouring Blackstone, and the dark aura on the thumb ring was even stronger than the heart-devouring Blackstone. Did this mean that Wolf C was from the faction behind the heart-devouring Blackstone? Nye Tian. At this moment, Wenren Xiang noticed Nye Tian's abnormality and transmitted a message. "After the battle, I will explain everything to you." Nye Tian replied and his expression gradually returned to normal. "Brat, do you think that I, Wolf C, am wrong?" Wolf C obviously noticed the change in Nye Tian's expression. He thought that his mocking words made Nye Tian unhappy and asked with a sneer. "I dare not." Nye Tian forced a smile and replied. Looking at the attitude of Wenren Xiang and the others towards Wolf C, the latter's identity was not ordinary. Nye Tian did not want to expose anything because of a moment of impulse. "Humph! I don't think you dare." Wolf C sneered, then his gaze swept across the others and said in a loud voice, "Today is the day of the ice and fire battle between your Sun Lang City and Song Lang City. The outcome of today's battle will determine the ownership of the Ice and Fire Springs for the next 10,000 years. The Ice and Fire Springs is located between the two cities. Whichever side wins this battle, the Ice and Fire Springs will belong to that side. You guys don't have any objections, right?" After saying that, Wolf C looked coldly at Nye Tian and the others, as well as the three young martialists on the other side. Wenren Xiang and the others nodded, indicating that they had no objections. Nye Tian's gaze froze. Only now did he know that this battle was for the Ice and Fire Springs. It sounded like the Ice and Fire Springs was a secret realm for martialists to cultivate, just like the Ice and Fire Lake of Situbai, one of the three elders of Saint Soul Academy. Nye Tian, Song Lang City won the previous battle, and now the Ice and Fire Springs are under their control. This time we must not lose. At this time, Wenren Xiang looked at Nye Tian and said in a low voice. Nye Tian nodded and didn't say anything else. "Everyone, you should know the rules of the battle, right?" Following that, Wolf C chuckled, but still explained, "Both sides will send out 3 people each, and the winner will continue to fight, while the loser will be eliminated. Whichever side loses, if all 3 of their members are eliminated." When Nye Tian heard Lang Ci's words, his eyes narrowed and his lips curled into a faint smile. This method of competition was quite reasonable. He just didn't know who would be the first to fight. Forest Wolf City, you were the losers. Who wants to be the first to fight? Step forward. Lang Ci looked at Wenren Xiang and the others and said coldly. Of course the weakest will go first. Before he finished speaking, Helian Tringfeng had already stepped forward. His eyes squinted at Nye Tian as he spoke in a strange tone. I will fight the first battle. At this time, Wenren Xiang stepped forward and said in a loud voice, Lady Wenren, let me fight the first battle. But immediately after, Nye Tian stepped forward and glanced coldly at Helian Qingfeng, then looked at Wenren Xiang and said indifferently. He didn't want to be the first to fight, but Helian Qingfeng didn't plan on fighting, and it wasn't appropriate for Wenren Xiang to fight first, so he could only reluctantly do it. All right, it's you. Without waiting for Wenren Xiang to speak, Wolf Si sneered and pointed at Nye Tian. He sneered and said, This Wolf Si wants to see if the Sun Lang City Lord is crazy. He actually sent a first-level Heaven Charm martial artist to participate in the battle. All right, then please watch carefully, Lord Wolf Si. Nye Tian glanced at Wolf Si and smiled faintly. Then, his figure moved and he stepped into the void. How dare a mere first-level heavenly charm trash be so insolent? Just as he was about to finish his sentence, a low and violent voice rang out. Then, a martial artist from Song Lang City stepped into the air and landed in the sky. He looked at Nye Tian with a pair of ferocious eyes, cold and filled with contempt. Nye Tian looked at the martialist in front of him, and the corner of his mouth twitched. This martialist was very strong. He was already at the 9th level of heavenly charm. After he released his aura, he wasn't any weaker than Helian Qingfeng. However, this kind of strength wasn't enough to make Nye Tian afraid. Brat, I only need one move to kill you. The martialist smiled coldly. His eyes were filled with killing intent. I'll return the same words to you. Nye Tianling laughed and secretly accumulated sword intent. You're courting death. The martial artist roared and the aura around him surged to the extreme in an instant. It turned into a surging force in the void, suppressing the heavens and earth, ferocious and violent. Go to hell. In the next moment, he roared and his figure moved. He struck out with his palm, causing the void to tremble. Suddenly, a thunderous palm appeared and a terrifying thunderbolt was released, forming a lightning chain that was tens of thousands of meters long. From afar, the martialist looked like he was in a sea of lightning. What a strong aura! Wolf Si narrowed his eyes and smiled coldly. A 9th-level heavenly charm thunder martialist using such power to kill a first-level heavenly charm martialist is a bit of a waste. In his opinion, killing Nye Tian didn't require such a powerful force. Helian Qingfeng's eyes trembled. His face didn't show worry, but passion. He wasn't worried about Nye Tian. He couldn't wait for Nye Tian to die on the spot. Wenren Xiang frowned slightly, but she wasn't too nervous. She believed in Nye Tian. So powerful! The thousands of Grey Wolf martial artists in the distance exclaimed in unison, and they were extremely shocked. Boom! In the next moment, the raging lightning power was unleashed and morphed into a huge lightning palm that pressed down towards Nye Tian. The space within a radius of tens of thousands of meters was filled with terrifying lightning power. Dazzling lightning bolts rolled out like a storm. Thunderbolt energy? Nye Tian's eyes narrowed. There was no fear in his eyes, only a strong fighting spirit. He sneered. I know it too! Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, his body trembled and a violent dragon aura was released. The dragon aura was filled with terrifying thunderbolt energy. Boom! In the next instant, a berserk dragon appeared within the sea of lightning. Its body was over 10,000 meters long, and it was covered in a layer of lightning energy. At the same time, there was a mysterious aura that caused the lightning energy within its body to explode out with an even more berserk aura. This time, not only did Nye Tian use the dragon aura, but he also integrated the power of the innumerable saint spirit into it. This was the first time he integrated the dragon aura with the saint spirit, which meant that he had a deeper understanding of the various powers in his body. Chapter 3502. Extreme Sharpness. How is this possible? The shocking scene in the sky caused everyone's eyes to tremble. They were shocked to the extreme, and their expressions instantly stiffened. Who would have thought that a first-stage heavenly charm martial artist could unleash such terrifying power in an instant? The moment the lightning dragon soared into the sky, it was as if it could swallow the sky. Rumble! Crack, crack, crack! At this moment, the huge dragon charged into the sea of lightning. It actually forcefully broke through the bolts of lightning and charged towards the blazing white lightning palm. Boom! Boom! The crowd was shocked by the scene in front of them. Many people's mouths were wide open, but no sound came out. The sky was filled with the power of lightning. The crowd could only see the violent lightning. They could not see Nie Tian and the Tsang Lang martial artist at all. Bang! After some time, a muffled sound could be heard. Then, a blood-colored figure flew out like a kite with a broken string and fell to the ground. It's someone from our Tsang Lang city. The crowd's eyes trembled as they looked at the blood-colored figure. Finally, someone recognized it and shouted loudly. The blood-colored figure was the Tsang Lang city martial artist. Without a doubt, Nie Tian won this battle. The crowd reacted and abruptly raised their heads. They saw a silver-haired silhouette standing in the air. His aura wasn't strong, but he gave off an extremely sharp feeling. It was as though he was standing there and could tear the heavens and earth apart with just a wave of his hand or a kick. This figure was, of course, Nie Tian. He and the Tsang Lang martial artist fought to the death the moment they fought. And the result of the competition was that he won. However, he also suffered some minor injuries. There were some wounds on his body that had just healed. One had to admit that the Tsang Lang martial artist was very strong. If this person had been more ruthless and used the 9 heavenly auras right from the start, it would have been hard to predict the outcome of this battle. The reason why Nie Tian could win was because he went all out. Furthermore, his power of thunder had a considerable suppressive effect on that martial artist. In the end, that cultivator was too careless. Actually, this wasn't his fault. No normal person would have thought that a first-stage heaven rhythm martial artist would be able to unleash such terrifying power in an instant. Nie Tian. At this time, Helian Qingfeng looked at Nie Tian from afar. His eyes were extremely sinister, as if he wanted to kill Nie Tian. Nie Tian's strength had far exceeded his expectations. Just as Wenren Xiang said, Nie Tian's battle prowess was no weaker than a 9th-level heavenly charm martial artist. Even he, Helian Qingfeng, would find it extremely difficult to defeat that ash wolf warrior. Nie Tian, however, had only used one move. At this time, Nie Tian smiled faintly, looked at Wolf C calmly and provocatively, and asked indifferently, "Lord Wolf C, may I ask if you saw clearly just now?" Wolf C frowned. His old face was incomparably gloomy and ugly to the extreme. He had to admit that the power that Nie Tian displayed just now had completely stunned him. He had never seen a martial artist's talent reach such a level. At this time, he knew that he had misjudged Nie Tian. "You're called Nie Tian, right?" Wolf C frowned for a good while before opening his mouth and saying, "You won and can continue fighting. Do you want to continue fighting the next person, or do you want to take a break?" The rules of the Battle of Ice and Fire were that the winner would continue fighting and the loser would be directly eliminated. After Nie Tian won, he had 2 choices. One was to continue fighting and fight the other 2 people from Ash Wolf City. If he could beat the remaining 2, then Helian Qingfeng and Wenren Xiang wouldn't need to make a move, and Sin Lang City would win. He also had another choice, which was to temporarily step down and let Helian Qingfeng and Wenren Xiang fight. "I'll take a break first." After thinking for a while, Nie Tian smiled faintly. He could tell that the strength of the other 2 people from Ash Wolf City was definitely not beneath that Thunderbolt martial artist. If he continued fighting, there would be danger. He wasn't a brute, and now wasn't the time to play the hero. Hence, it was better to take a break. Moreover, if he kept winning, then wouldn't there be no need for Helian Qingfeng and Wenren Xiang to exist? Wolf C looked at Nie Tian and couldn't help but be stunned. He originally thought that with Nie Tian's youthful vigor, he would choose to continue fighting. From the look of it, Nie Tian was much more shrewd than he had thought. Helian Qingfeng, Wenren Xiang, which one of you wants to fight next? Then, Wolf C looked at Wenren Xiang and Helian Qingfeng and asked coldly. Younger sister Xiang, let me go. Helian Qingfeng didn't wait for Wenren Xiang to speak and directly said this. Then, he took a step forward and stepped into the void. Wenren Xiang frowned but didn't say anything. Nie Tian, are you alright? At this time, Nie Tian came to Wenren Xiang's side, and the latter asked with concern. I'm fine. Nie Tian smiled faintly, his face calm. He only suffered some light injuries. After a little recovery, he would be completely fine. Boom! And just at this moment, a figure descended from the sky like a gigantic mountain, causing the entire void to tremble. Nie Tian looked at that person and couldn't help but narrow his eyes. That guy looked incomparably skinny like a hemp stick, but standing in the void, he had a strange and incomparably sharp aura. That person was also at the 9th level of heavenly charm, but his aura was much stronger than that of the previous Thunder Warrior. And at this time, a mysterious aura circulated around the skinny warrior's body. It was sharp to the extreme, as if it could tear everything apart. Your aura! At this time, Helian Qingfeng looked at that skinny warrior and seemed to have sensed something. He became very flustered and couldn't help but exclaim. I'm going to attack. That skinny warrior didn't wait for Helian Qingfeng to finish speaking. His figure instantly moved. On his palm, a scarlet light appeared and flew out like a stream of light. Its speed was extremely fast as it flew towards Helian Qingfeng. Ming family! Helian Qingfeng's eyes trembled. He shouted in horror and his figure instantly retreated. But unfortunately, it was already too late. PFFF. That scarlet light arrived in an instant, directly piercing through Helian Qingfeng's shoulder. Swish! 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 Helian Qingfeng's body trembled in horror, and at this time, an earth-shattering scarlet light appeared in the void. Suddenly, a huge killing intent spread across the entire world. Chapter 3503. A Desperate Gamble, Raging Flame Crystal. This is the power of the Ming family's bloodline. While Nie Tian was still in a daze, Wenren Xiang, who was standing next to him, let out a startled cry, and her pretty face stiffened. She did not expect that the lean martial artist was actually someone from the Ming family. Whoosh! 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 At this moment, the raging flame crystal in the air suddenly moved. An ear-piercing sound came from the air, as though the space could not bear it and was about to collapse. I admit defeat. Helian Qingfeng's eyes trembled. Feeling the sharp aura rushing towards him, he actually shouted and admitted defeat on the spot. Humph! The lean martial artist sneered and waved his long sleeves. The raging flame crystal in the air directly disappeared. Who? Helian Qingfeng felt the sharp aura in the air stop abruptly. His pupils constricted, and after coming to his senses, he let out a long breath of turbid air. His forehead and body were already drenched in cold sweat. It was really a moment of life and death, just now. If the lean martial artist did not stop, he would definitely die on the spot. Humph! At this moment, the lean martial artist sneered. His eyes were filled with extreme contempt. He looked at Helian Qingfeng and said, "You should be glad that your surname is Helian. Otherwise, you would not even have a corpse left." The lean martial artist won the battle without any bloodshed. The reason why he did not kill Helian Qingfeng was not because he was soft-hearted, but because he was afraid of the Helian family behind Helian Qingfeng. Helian Qingfeng's face was ugly. He looked at the lean martial artist with fear, not daring to speak. Mingtai! 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 At this moment, the martial artists of Tsonglang City reacted and shouted the name of the lean martial artist. So this guy is Mingtai. Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes trembled. She was surprised. She had never seen Mingtai before, but she had heard of this name. Mingtai was one of the 3 geniuses of the Ming family's younger generation. No wonder the raging flame crystal bloodline in his body was so terrifying. Helian Qingfeng was a martial artist of the same level as Mingtai. However, in front of the latter, he had no chance to resist. Nie Tian looked at Mingtai and his lips twitched. He thought to himself, the most terrifying thing about this person's bloodline isn't his strength, but his speed. It was impossible to dodge those extremely sharp raging flame crystals. I'm afraid that even a warrior at the first tier of the Heavenly Mandate realm might not be able to block the fiery crystal. This Wolf Commander announces that this match, Mingtai wins. At this time, Wolf C's voice rang out. He looked at Mingtai and asked loudly, Mingtai, do you want to continue fighting or rest for a while? There's no need to trouble yourself. I alone am enough. Let's continue. Mingtai's gaze swept over Wenren Xiang and Nie Tian as he sneered. It was obvious that he didn't take Nie Tian seriously at all. Good. Wolf C laughed, looked at Nie Tian and Wenren Xiang and asked, You two, who will fight? Me. Me. Almost at the same time, Nie Tian and Wenren Xiang stood up, both wanting to fight. Lady Wenren, let me do it. Nie Tian looked at Wenren Xiang and said lightly. Let me do it. Wenren Xiang was extremely insistent, after which, she stepped out and flew up into the air. Nie Tian frowned and he couldn't help but worry. Mingtai's strength was very terrifying. He showed mercy to Helian Qingfeng, but it didn't mean that he would show mercy to Wenren Xiang. For Nie Tian, it didn't matter whether Wenren Xiang won or not. The most important thing was that she could survive. People of the Wenren family. Mingtai looked at Wenren Xiang with a pair of cold eyes, as if he wanted to eat someone. Make your move. Wenren Xiang didn't waste time and said directly. Since you are so eager to die, I will fulfill your wish. Mingtai smiled coldly. His palm moved and a crimson raging flame crystal appeared in his hand. Suddenly, the void was filled with a sharp aura. Swoosh. In the next moment, Mingtai made his move. The raging flame crystal was like a crimson flame, piercing through the air and rushing towards Wenren Xiang at an extremely fast speed. Wenren Xiang's slender body flickered, and the 9-leaf duckweed appeared, which blossomed in midair. 1 leaf became 2, and then 2 became 4, until it became an inexhaustible amount of duckweed, which formed a green shield around her. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he saw this. Wenren Xiang knew that she couldn't dodge the raging flame crystal, so she chose to defend and take the attack head-on. Bang! At this moment, the raging flame crystal fell and bombarded the duckweed shield. After a muffled sound, a big hole appeared on the shield, and the raging flame crystal shattered. Wenren Xiang used the duckweed shield to block the attack of the raging flame crystal. A little interesting. Mingtai was surprised when he saw this, but then he sneered and said, The 9-leaf duckweed's defense and vitality are really strong. But unfortunately, no matter how strong the duckweed is, it will turn to ashes in front of the raging flame. Hua, hua, hua. As soon as he finished speaking, 3 larger raging flame crystals appeared in his hand, and the sharp aura they emitted was even stronger. The 3 raging flame crystals seemed to contain the power to tear the sky apart, extremely sharp. Is that so? Wenren Xiang sneered, and the gap on the duckweed shield instantly recovered. The 9-leaf duckweed was a special sacred weapon that contained an extremely powerful force. It could be used together with the power of a cultivator's bloodline. The stronger the bloodline of a cultivator, the stronger the power of the 9-leaf duckweed. Kill! In the next instant, Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes turned cold as she shouted in a low voice and actually took the offensive. Her figure was like a green ray of light that blasted towards Mingtai. You're courting death. Mingtai frowned and then he laughed gloomily. He didn't hold back any longer, and an expanse of crimson-red blaze crystals appeared all over his body. There were a few thousand of them, and they were like numerous flaming blades. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Ming Tai's eyes trembled, and he was extremely vicious. Thousands of raging flame crystals shot out, covering the sky and pressing down on Wenren Xiang. At the same time, the duckweed shield around Wenren Xiang's body trembled, and then turned into a giant duckweed sword that slashed down, pressing down on the void. It turned out that Wenren Xiang seemed to be defending on the surface, but she was actually taking the initiative to attack. Of course, she understood that passively defending could at most prevent her from being defeated, but it could not prevent him from dying. If she wanted to win, she could only fight with her life on the line. What a fierce woman! Wolf Si's eyes trembled when he saw this scene, and he exclaimed. Helian Chengfeng's expression was extremely gloomy and ugly. As a woman, Wenren Xiang could still fight with her life on the line, but he could only admit defeat. He was worse than a woman. Boom boom boom. At this moment, the giant green sword slammed into the raging flame crystals that filled the sky. Violent explosions sounded in the void, as if the entire world was about to collapse. One by one, the raging flame crystals shattered, and the giant green sword continued to shorten. Bang! After a while, the giant green sword in Wenren Xiang's hand finally could not withstand it anymore and shattered. Chapter 3504. The Extreme Demon Strikes Again. Oh no! Wenren Xiang felt the incoming killing intent. Her beautiful eyes trembled, and her heart was filled with horror. She had used all her strength in that attack just now and had no intention of retreating. However, Ming Tai's strength had far exceeded her expectations. Even if she used the 9-leaf duckweed to its limit, she was still no match for Ming Tai. Die. Ming Tai smiled coldly, his face cold. If the flaming crystals fell, Wenren Xiang would definitely die. Wenren Xiang, you have already lost. Leave the next battle to me. At this moment, a low voice sounded in the void. Then, a figure appeared in the void and blocked in front of Wenren Xiang. PFFF PFFF PFFF. In the next instant, several flaming crystals fell and directly pierced through the figure's body. The figure was immediately covered in blood. Wenren Xiang suddenly froze. Seeing Nie Tian standing in front of her, she could not help but exclaim, Nie Tian. She never imagined that at the moment of life and death, Nie Tian would use his flesh and blood to block the fatal flaming crystals for her. I'm fine. Nie Tian steadied his body and did not turn around. He only waved his hand, indicating that Wenren Xiang should not come closer. Wenren Xiang's body froze. For a moment, she did not know what to say. The sudden scene stunned Helian Qingfeng for a moment. Then, he frowned and thought coldly in his heart, Kid with the surname Nye, do you like to play the hero so much? I want to see how you will fight the next battle. At the same time, Ming Tai frowned and his expression changed slightly. He looked at Nie Tian with an incomparably gloomy expression and a trace of surprise. He did not expect Nie Tian's action. Moreover, Nie Tian was still able to stand steadily after being pierced by several flaming crystals. This shocked him even more. Could it be that Nie Tian's martial body was even more terrifying than that of a heavenly mandate realm expert? Nie Tian. And at this time, Wolf Si's deep roar came from the other side. His rage was like thunder as he shouted, How dare you! Their battle hasn't even ended yet. Who allowed you to interfere? Wenren Xiang has already lost. There is no need to continue the fight. Nie Tian knew he was in the wrong, but he still spoke coldly. It was true that he couldn't interfere with their battle, but he also couldn't watch Wenren Xiang die. His martial physique could withstand several raging flame crystals, but Wenren Xiang couldn't. In fact, he could directly block these raging flame crystals. However, he chose to take them head-on with his body because he had other plans. How dare you? Wolf Si growled and said in a cold tone, I, Wolf Si, as the referee of this battle, can now declare that your Forest Wolf City has lost. Sure. Nie Tian nodded slightly and said without the slightest hesitation, If Lord Wolf Sea decides that Forest Wolf City has lost, we have no complaints and can leave now. You. Wolf Sea's eyes darkened. He was speechless for a moment. Now, 2 people from Forest Wolf City had already been eliminated. Only Nye Tian was left, and he was seriously injured by the raging flame crystals. If he judged that Forest Wolf City had lost, it would be too easy for them. Su Kuanga, Ming Tai, Forest Wolf City's people violated the rules first. I can judge that they have lost. Then, Wolf Sea looked at the remaining 2 people from Song Lang City, Su Kuanga and Ming Tai, and said loudly. Then, he changed the topic and said, "But if you think that the battle can continue, then I have no opinion. The battle continues." Not waiting for Su Kuanga to speak, Ming Tai directly spoke. He looked sharply at Nye Tian and said, "You killed my Song Lang City's people. How can you let him leave like this?" "Sure." Nye Tian smiled faintly, his face was calm. Everything was within his expectations. He used his body to resist the raging flame crystals, so that the people from Song Lang City could see that he was seriously injured. In this way, the battle could continue. "Okay, I declare that the battle continues." Wolf Sea smiled cold and said directly. "Nye Tian." Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes trembled. She shouted Nye Tian, but she didn't know what to say. At this time, she really hoped that this battle would end. She couldn't believe that Nye Tian could still fight with Ming Tai when he was seriously injured. Most importantly, behind Ming Tai, there was still Su Kuanga who hadn't appeared yet. Even if Nye Tian miraculously defeated Ming Tai, could he defeat Su Kuanga? Su Kuanga was one of the 9 wolves of Wolf's Night Mountain. "I'm fine." Nye Tian turned around and looked at Wenren Xiang. The corner of his mouth twitched and he smiled indifferently. There was no fear at all. Instead, he had a calm look on his face. Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes trembled. She didn't know why, but her eyes became wet. "Boy, come and die." At this time, Ming Tai's cold voice resounded. The aura of his body rose crazily, and the raging flame crystals around his body became even more terrifying. The previous Thunderbolt warrior died in the hands of Nye Tian because he was careless. He, Ming Tai, would never make such a mistake. He treated Nye Tian as a real opponent, and he would go all out. "Okay." Nye Tian smiled indifferently. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he seemed to be provoking Ming Tai. Courting death. Ming Tai felt provoked. His eyes trembled and he roared. His body shook, and countless raging flame crystals shot out, like a waterfall of fire, and rushed towards Nye Tian. Buzz. In an instant the void was pulled tight. The heavens and earth roared, as if it was about to collapse. Under this huge force, the heavens and earth seemed to be wailing. This. Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes trembled when she saw this scene. Her nerves were stretched taut, and her heart jumped to her throat. "Nye Tian, you're dead." Not far from her, Hellion Qingfeng had a sinister expression, and he was secretly happy. He didn't care about the outcome of the battle at Wolf Forest City. He only cared about whether Nye Tian would die or not. At this moment, the corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched. "Ming Tai, let's see if your raging flame crystal is fiercer than my extreme demon destruction seal." Immediately after, the extreme demon destruction seal appeared in front of the demon eye. Not long ago, he had just used the extreme demon annihilation seal, and the power of the demon eye wasn't full yet. However, it was enough to defeat Ming Tai. Bang! In the next instant, a dark eye power appeared, and it broke through the air, turning into a blade of eye power, and attacked Ming Tai. At this moment, Lang Si felt the fluctuation of eye power in the air. His eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he exclaimed in shock. Not even in his dreams did he expect that Nye Tian was a cultivator with other eyes. And Nye Tian's eye power was so terrifying. Bang bang bang. Poof. Then, wherever the blade of eye power passed, the raging flame crystals shattered. Before Ming Tai could react, he felt a black shadow attack him, and then a fist-sized hole appeared on his chest. Instantly, his body trembled, and he was sent flying. While he was still in midair, his entire body was dyed red with blood. At the same time, the raging flame crystals that filled the sky, after losing their support, immediately weakened. Even when they landed on Nietian, they didn't hurt him. Moments later, the raging flame crystal vanished, leaving Nietian standing in midair like a sharp sword that shone with unparalleled sharpness. Everyone's eyes trembled as they looked at Nietian, and their expressions were so shocked that they couldn't speak. Chapter 3505. Wolf's Night Madness. High up in the sky, the place was deathly silent. Nietianling stood in midair, not saying a word. Everyone stared at Nietian with incomparable astonishment in their eyes, their hearts filled to the brim. No one expected that Nietian could defeat Ming Tai with just one move. Ming Tai was famous not only in Songlang City, but even in the entire Wolf's Night City. Since he could be ranked as one of the 3 geniuses of the Ming family's younger generation, one could see how powerful his bloodline talent was. However, such a genius bloodline martial artist had actually been defeated by Nietian. Moreover, he had been defeated in a single move. How could everyone not be shocked by this? Helian Chengfeng's expression was lifeless. The corner of his mouth twitched violently, as if he wanted to say something, but he couldn't make a sound. Wenren Xiang was also stunned and couldn't react for a long time. Why are you so strong? After a long time, a low voice sounded. Ming Tai's figure appeared. He wasn't dead, but his body was covered in blood. Clearly, he was heavily injured and had no more strength to fight. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine that he would be defeated by a heavenly charm stage 1 martial artist. You should be glad that you are from the Ming family. Otherwise, you would already be a corpse. Nietian smiled and replied coldly. Ming Tai had said the same thing to Helian Qingfeng. However, at this moment, Nietian gave it back to him. This wasn't just a humiliation to Ming Tai, it was also a humiliation to Helian Qingfeng. Indeed, Nietian could have killed Ming Tai directly. The reason why he didn't do so was because he was afraid. From Wenren Xiang's reaction, it seemed that the Ming family that Ming Tai belonged to was very powerful in Wolf's Night Mountain. Nietian didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble, so he didn't kill Ming Tai. Pft! Ming Tai's eyes trembled and his face darkened. He wanted to say something, but he spat out a mouthful of blood. Nietian no longer paid any attention to Ming Tai. Instead, he turned to look at Wolf Si in the distance and said, "Lord Wolf Si, the battle can continue." "All right." After staring blankly for a long time, Wolf Si finally reacted. He nodded his head, then looked at the last person of Ash Wolf City, Su Kuanga, and said, "Su Kuanga, it's your turn. Don't disgrace the reputation of the Spear Emperor clan." "Yes." Su Kuanga stood there like a block of ice. He nodded blankly and then walked forward step by step. He seemed very calm, but with every step he took, his aura became stronger. What a good Wolf Night Wild song. This is going to be interesting. Wolf Si looked at Su Kuanga, his eyes slightly trembled, and he secretly sneered. Su Kuanga, one of the 9 wolves of Wolf's Night Mountain. The mountain of the Night of the Wolf, the glory of the wolf. The so-called 9 wolves were the 9 most talented people in the entire Wolf's Night Mountain under 10,000 years old. Su Kuanga was one of the 9 wolves. He had a nickname, Wolf Night Wild Song, the god of spears. Su Kuanga was a member of the Wolf Night Mountain's Spear Emperor clan, the descendant of the Spear Emperor clan's Monarch spear. In Wolf's Night Mountain, Su Kuanga also had another title, the strongest saint. Su Kuanga's strength was at the 9th level of heavenly rhythm, and he was known to be invincible among those at the same level. And Nietian was only at the 1st level of heavenly rhythm. How could he fight against an invincible 9th level heavenly rhythm? Wolf Si coldly looked at Nietian. He had already seen that after Nye Tian used the demonic eye, tears of blood flowed out from the corner of his eyes. This undoubtedly meant that Nye Tian's eye power was almost exhausted. Without eye power, Nye Tian's other eye was useless. However, Wolf C was very puzzled. Why did Nye Tian only use one eye? Could it be that there was someone else with a single eye? I thought I didn't need to make a move, but I didn't expect there to be an anomaly. At this time, Su Kuanga arrived at the mountain high in the sky. His eyes were as deep as a cold lake, without a trace of fluctuation. The spear intent around his body didn't have much impact on the surrounding void, but it gave people a very frightening feeling. It was as if the spear intent was a ferocious beast that was hiding in the void. The next moment, it would burst out and devour everything. To be able to become an anomaly in your eyes, should I be honored? Nye Tian faintly smiled, equally calm. To be able to fight with me is the glory of your life, Su Kuanga said in a deep voice. His eyes were like ice, cold and calm. Wolf Night Wild Song was indeed crazy. Is that so? Nye Tian's mouth twitched, but he didn't deny it. He could feel the terrifying spear intent around Su Kuanga's body. The latter was definitely an extremely frightening opponent. Make your move. Su Kuanga didn't say anything else. His cold eyes trembled a bit, and then he took a step forward. Suddenly, the void around him shook, as if it was about to collapse. As he stood there, he was like a strange mountain, incomparably majestic, and surged through the sky. Boom! In the next moment, Su Kuanga's spear intent was released, like a stormy sea, striking the void. Suddenly, the space within tens of thousands of meters was filled with violent and overbearing spear intent. What a strong spear intent! Seeing this scene, Nye Tian's eyes couldn't help but tremble. His heart was shocked. Among all the spear users he had seen, Su Kuanga was the absolute number one. Judging from the spear intent, Su Kuanga had actually reached the 9th layer of spear aura realm. Moreover, Su Kuanga's spear intent was extremely pure, giving people a very vigorous feeling. This meant that during the process of cultivation, he didn't fuse with any external forces, but relied on his own cultivation to reach the 9th layer of spear aura realm. Such a terrifying spear Dao talent could be called abnormal. One must know that even Nye Tian had to borrow external forces several times, and even absorb the power of the sword crystal to barely reach the transcendent, profound sword realm. In fact, this kind of breakthrough method was detrimental to the growth of a swordsman. It would cause the sword intent to become impure, and even lead to the collapse of the sword intent. However, Nye Tian had the power of the stars, which had a mixing effect on the sword intent, so his sword intent looked even purer. This was the power of the stars, which was the source of power, bringing a huge potential benefit to Nye Tian. Su Kuanga didn't have a heaven-defying object like the Star Origin Stone, but he could rely on his own strength to cultivate to the 9th layer of spear aura realm. His terrifying talent could be imagined. Wolf Knight Kuanga, worthy of being called the god of spear. Seeing this scene, Lang Xi's eyes slightly trembled. He was extremely surprised. Of course, he could see how terrifying Su Kuanga was. The latter's strength even exceeded his expectations. This time, Nye Tian would definitely die. Su Kuanga is indeed strong. Helian Qingfeng's eyes trembled. His heart was shocked. Wolf Knight 9 wolves, which one of them wasn't a peak monster. I have cultivated the Monarch spear, and with the Monarch spear intent, I will kill you. At this time, Su Kuanga once again opened his mouth. His mighty voice resounded in the void, like a clap of thunder, vigorous and rolling. Immediately, a golden spear appeared in his hand. The body of the spear was engraved with a golden dragon. As if it had a life of its own, it seemed to be surging on the spear body. Chapter 3506. Emperor's Mad Song. Su Kuanga coldly stood in the void, holding the Emperor's Mad Song in his hand. His spear intent soared to the sky and an overbearing aura was released. It was as if he was the ruler of the world, as if the heavens and earth had to bow down before him. He was the successor of the Emperor's spear, and the Emperor's spear art was known as the Emperor of the Spear. Nye Tian, you have to be careful. This person's spear intent is too strong. You have to use all your strength to fight against him. At this time, the Ghost Emperor's voice was heard. It was obvious that he was worried about Nye Tian. Nye Tian had met many opponents before, but not many could make the Ghost Emperor so worried. All right, Nye Tian replied. Two energies surged in his body. It was the Sky Evolution Saint Spirit and the Omni-Tribulation Saint Spirit. Facing an opponent like Su Kuanga, if he still held back, he would be courting death. Die! At this time, Su Kuanga let out a low roar and his figure moved. He soared into the sky like a rainbow. The Emperor's mad song streaked across the sky like a lightning bolt piercing through the void. Then, a powerful spear shadow rushed towards Nye Tian like a roaring dragon. Such a terrifying spear intent. The crowd's eyes trembled violently. Su Kuanga's casual attack made the crowd feel a strong fluctuation of spear intent. That kind of momentum was even more terrifying than Ming Tai's when he fully released the power of the flame crystal bloodline. One should know that Ming Tai had used all his strength, while Su Kuanga had just casually attacked with his spear. Nye Tian's eyes slightly narrowed. He instantly felt that his whole body was shrouded by a strong spear intent. The oppressive feeling made his expression change. Su Kuanga's spear intent was more terrifying than he had expected. Boom! In the next moment, Nye Tian's body shook. Suddenly, the sword intent inside his body crazily exploded like a landslide, like a tsunami. The violent sword intent caused the void to tremble, making him feel a lot more relaxed. Saint Heaven-defying sword, earth and man as one, stars and moons sink. Immediately after, Nye Tian's eyes darkened. He did not dare to be careless. The demonic sword of seven death in his hand directly stabbed out. A sword shadow whizzed out, carrying with it the power of the celestial evolution Saint Spirit and the omniscient Saint Spirit. Seeing this, Wolf C's eyes couldn't help but tremble. He could tell that Nye Tian's body contained the power of the Saint Spirit. This made his lips twitch as he sneered in his heart. A heavenly rhythmic warrior actually has an immemorial saint's soul. Interesting. Boom. At this moment, the spear shadow and the sword shadow collided with one another, causing the entire heaven and earth to tremble violently. An endless amount of killing and berserk power burst out and spread out in all directions. Bang! Crack! In the next moment, the sword shadow could no longer withstand the pressure and instantly shattered. As for the spear shadow, it only cracked a little before it broke through the layers of raging waves and pressed down on Nye Tian. Boom, boom, boom. Bang. The roar in Nye Tian's ears became louder and louder. His eyes slightly darkened as he quickly retreated, but it was still too late. He was instantly hit by the spear shadow and flew backward. His figure flew thousands of meters away before he managed to stabilize himself. However, there were several horrifying wounds on his body. Even his wrists had split open, and he couldn't even hold his sword steadily. He had fought countless people, but this was the first time he was in such a sorry state. His sword was about to fall out of his hand. Nye Tian, are you okay? The Ghost Emperor was extremely nervous and asked anxiously. I'm fine. Nye Tian's face was gloomy as he responded in a deep voice. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Su Kuanga. At this moment, Su Kuanga looked at Nye Tian without the slightest hint of a smile on his face. Instead, he was very surprised and angry. He didn't expect that Nye Tian could still stand there steadily after being hit by his spear. Nye Tian was only at the first level of the heavenly charm realm. To be able to take his spear attack was simply a disgrace to him. Everyone saw this scene and their eyes trembled violently. They didn't know what to say. At this moment, They didn't know whether to say Su Kuanga or Nye Tian was stronger. Although Nye Tian was seriously injured by Su Kuanga's spear attack, one must know that he was only at the first level of the heavenly charm realm. With his cultivation, it was simply unimaginable that he could block Su Kuanga's spear attack. Nye Tian, it seems that I have underestimated you. At this moment, Su Kuanga opened his mouth coldly. The aura of his body once again skyrocketed. The Emperor's berserk song in his hand was truly like a monarch. It released an incomparably terrifying aura as if it was the ruler of this world. This guy is really difficult to deal with. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed as he felt the monstrous sword intent from Su Kuanga's body. He was secretly shocked. Su Kuanga cultivated the Emperor's spear. His Emperor's spear intent was extremely overbearing, vigorous and terrifying. Even with Nye Tian's martial body, it was extremely strenuous to withstand the impact of the Emperor's spear intent. Nye Tian, I, Su Kuanga, respect you as a true opponent. I will give you a dignified death. Prepare to take my second spear attack. High up in the sky, Su Kuanga let out a deep roar. Suddenly, the spear intent in his body surged violently like 10,000 demons dancing wildly. It released a dazzling golden spear intent in the void. Boom! In the next moment, the Emperor's berserk song streaked across the void like a golden dragon. Suddenly, a terrifying spear intent descended, oppressing the void. Then, like a mad dragon, it crazily pressed down on Nye Tian. Nye Tian's eyes slightly narrowed. His expression immediately changed. Sword intent crazily released from his body. At the same time, 9 heavenly Dao shackles were released from his body like 9 giant snakes. They danced around his body as if they wanted to devour everything. Kill! Immediately, Nye Tian let out a low roar. His violent battle intent pushed the sword intent around his body to the extreme. A terrifying sword intent whistled out and rushed towards the spear shadow. Boom! In the next moment, a terrifying collision occurred. The void suddenly trembled. Suddenly, the sky and earth sank, as if it was about to collapse. So strong! The eyes of the crowd trembled. They exclaimed in horror and immediately retreated. Bang! At this moment, another muffled sound came out. Nye Tian's figure once again flew backward, drawing a bloody arc in the air. Crack, crack, crack! He was still in the air. His body emitted the sound of bones breaking. His whole body seemed like it was about to collapse. However, in the next moment, a pair of star soul wings appeared behind Nye Tian's back. He forcibly stabilized his body in the air, and then stood still. His body slightly swayed. His whole body was in extreme pain. Su Kuanga's spear not only seriously injured him, but also broke several bones in his body. After this spear attack, his injuries became even more serious. Nye Tian. In the distance, Wenren Xiang's voice sounded. She was nervous and trembling. She wanted Nye Tian to admit defeat. The gap between Nye Tian and Su Kuanga's strength was too big. After Su Kuanga's 2 spear attacks, Nye Tian was still standing there. It was already very powerful. There was no need to continue this battle. I'm fine. Nye Tian turned around and looked at Wenren Xiang. He faintly smiled and said, perhaps in the eyes of others, Nye Tian had no chance to defeat Su Kuanga. Continuing to fight was just courting death.